Leo listened to Landon Archer, his expression growing complicated. It was exactly as he'd suspected. When Isabel had dropped everything and flown from New York to the Ozarks to find him, her father had known about it all along. What Leo hadn't expected was that Richard Thornton, upon learning of his existence, had fought with Isabel and grounded her. She had been confined to the house for over a week, yet she hadn't shown any sign of distress in their texts. Leo hadn't suspected a thing. He realized now that she'd hidden it all to keep him from worrying. A wave of guilt and heartache washed over him. He was silent for a moment before looking up at Landon. Then, "Leo, I know you came to New York to surprise her," Landon said, cutting him off gently. "She mentioned it to me before, told me you'd be coming soon to take her to all the places she'd never been. You know, before I went abroad, Isabel and I spent a lot of time here, and I tried to take her out so many times, but she was never interested in anything. But that day, when she told me you were coming, her eyes were just full of anticipation. I'd never seen her like that before." Landon paused, a faint smile on his lips. "I didn't get it back then. I mean, our relationships with her are different, but we're both important people in her life. Logically, she shouldn't treat us so differently. But I see it now. Even among the important people in your life, there are distinctions. The love you have for family isn't the same as the love you have for—" He trailed off. Leo fell silent again, an indescribable warmth spreading through his chest. After a long moment, he spoke again, his question abrupt. "Landon, the house she's staying at in New York. How high are the walls? Are there security patrols? Any cameras?" Landon stared, completely baffled. After his heartfelt speech, this was Leo's takeaway? It took him a second to process. The walls are maybe 10 feet. As for security, it's not the main Thornton estate in Crestview. It's just a big house. There aren't that many guards on the grounds." "Oh," Leo said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Landon's eyes widened as realization dawned. "Leo, you're not thinking of climbing the wall, are you?" Leo nodded without hesitation. "It's an option. If there's no other way to see her, that's what I'll do. I promised her I'd come to New York. I can't just turn back because she's grounded." "Leo, don't," Landon pleaded. "If Sharon or Mr. Thornton finds you, the consequences will be serious. Look, how about this? I'll call Lester right now. He's the person Isabel trusts most. Maybe he can get a message to her." Landon pulled out his phone and made the call. Half an hour later, the door to their private room opened, and Lester walked in. He started to greet Landon, "Mr. Archer," but stopped short when he saw Leo sitting across from him. His expression turned to one of utter shock. "Mr. Yeager, what are you doing in New York?" he exclaimed. "Are you here to see the young miss?" Before Leo could answer, Landon jumped in. "Yes, but we just found out she's been grounded. Mr. Thornton took her phone yesterday evening. We can't even contact her, let alone see her. I was hoping, since you're so close to her and can get into the house, that maybe you could let her know Leo's here." Leo nodded in agreement. Lester just let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head with a heavy sigh. "Mr. Yeager, Mr. Archer, I'm afraid I can't help you this time." "Why not?" Landon asked, shocked. "Lester, you've always doted on her. What's different today?" Realizing the misunderstanding, Lester quickly explained. "No, Mr. Archer, you got it wrong. It's not that I don't want to help. It's because of that trip to the Ozarks. When Mr. Thornton found out I flew her there on the private jet, he said I enabled her. He had me demoted. I'm just a driver in the General Motor Pool now. Other than chauffeuring the occasional guest, I can't even get close to Mr. Thornton or the young miss." He paused, his voice dropping lower. "And what's more, after he took her phone, he specifically ordered all the staff, everyone, to leave their personal phones outside the main house when they enter. He's afraid she'll find a way to contact someone, without a direct summons from him or Mrs. Thornton. I'm not even allowed inside anymore." Leo and Landon exchanged a stunned look. Neither of them had imagined Richard Thornton would go to such lengths. Seeing their silence, Lester added quietly, "Mr. Archer, you can still get in. You can tell her Leo is here. Mr. Thornton wouldn't give you a hard time." "Then that's what I have to do," Landon sighed. "But he probably won't let me take my phone in either." He turned to Leo. "Come on, Leo. I'll take you over there." They drove to the Thorntons' New York residence. While not as sprawling as the estate in Crestview, the house was still an imposing, magnificent structure. Landon told Leo to wait in the car and walked up to the main gate. The guards saw him and bowed respectfully. "Mr. Archer." Landon explained his purpose and was ushered inside. Leo sat in the car, waiting. Nearly 30 minutes crawled by before Landon finally emerged from the house, a small box in his hand. His expression was noticeably heavier than when he'd gone in. He slid back into the driver's seat. "Did you see her?" Leo asked immediately. "Yeah." Landon said, his voice low. She was so happy to hear you were here. But her father is genuinely furious this time. There's absolutely no chance of her sneaking out to meet you. A wave of disappointment washed over Leo. Did she say anything else? Landon shook his head but handed the box to Leo. Confused, Leo opened it. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a soft, pale blue scarf. Beside it lay a small, folded note. My love, read this and see my face. My love, read this and see my face. Leo stared at the elegant, familiar handwriting, a profound sense of loss settling over him. He knew Isabel could have written more, pages and pages, but she had chosen just this single, potent line. Knowing her, she was probably just as heartbroken as he was, but didn't want her sadness to bleed onto the page, nor did she want him to think for a second that she wasn't missing him desperately. So she'd written the one sentence that could convey both her love and her longing all at once. He looked up, his gaze finding a second-story window of the grand house. He had a feeling, a certainty, that it was hers. After a long moment, he looked back down, his fingers gently tracing the soft, slightly imperfect yarn of the blue scarf. It felt like touching her tenderness itself. She had clearly knitted it for him by hand. He wondered if she'd made it during the days he was recovering in the Ozarks, or if she'd been working on it even before then. Seeing his expression, Landon said softly, Leo, we should go. There's no way for you to see her right now. Her father was in there when I went in, so I couldn't even have tried to sneak you in with a disguise. He'd recognize you in a heartbeat. We'd never pull it off. Leo's eyes were a mixture of disappointment and resolve. I can't just leave. Landon sighed. I get it, Leo. I know this trip wasn't just about seeing each other. It has a deeper meaning for both of you. But you have to know that we can't change the reality of the situation. Unless her dad has a change of heart, she's not getting out of that house. He softened his tone. Look, he can't keep her locked up forever. He's just angry right now. I'll get you a place to stay. You can wait it out in New York for a few days. Leo considered it for a moment, then shook his head. Landon, I told you before I came. If it came down to it, I'd climb the wall. You said it's less than 10 feet. For someone with my skills, that's not hard. And you said security is light. Landon's eyes widened in alarm. Leo, are you insane? That's too dangerous. If Mr. Thornton catches you, I can't even imagine the fallout. I used to climb walls like that all the time as a kid. It's easy. Her dad will never find out. Seeing the serious look on Leo's face, Landon's expression hardened. No, Leo, I won't let you do it. Even if you promise me you won't get caught, I can't let you take that risk. Because if you mess up, sure, nothing major will happen to you. I can step in and Mr. Thornton won't have you arrested or anything. But Isabel will pay the price. An act like that would permanently poison his opinion of you. Knowing his personality, he'd probably try to cut you out of her life for good. And she'd likely be forbidden from ever returning to Crestview, maybe for years. Crestview was her mother's home, Leo. She would be devastated. As her friend, I cannot allow that to happen. Landon took a deep breath, his face grim. So, no matter what, you are not climbing that wall. All right, I get it, Leo said with a sigh, not arguing further. He was quiet for a moment. Then let's do what you said. I'll stay in the city for a few days, and we can talk about some business for Starfall Studios. Now you're talking, Landon said, a relieved smile finally breaking through. He buckled his seatbelt, ready to drive away. Just as the engine roared to life, Leo spoke up. Hey, can you just drop me here? I want to walk around for a bit. It's closer to her. I just want to stay near her a little longer. Landon hesitated. Okay, Leo, I trust you're a rational person. This isn't just an excuse to get rid of me, right? Leo shook his head. Of course not. All right, take a walk. Call me whenever you're done, and I'll come pick you up. Thanks. Landon sped off in his fluorescent green Lamborghini, the engine's roar fading into the distance. Soon, the street of the massive, gated community was silent, leaving Leo alone. He glanced back one more time at the house before turning and walking toward a small park across the street. By 5 in the afternoon, Leo had been sitting on a park bench for nearly 3 hours. On a winter day like this, the sky was already beginning to darken and the temperature was dropping. He opened the box he'd been holding, took out the scarf Isabel had knitted for him, and wrapped it around his neck. It still carried the faint, sweet scent of her. Ooh! He rubbed his hands together, his breath turning to white mist in the cold air. Just then, he saw a black Escalade pull slowly out of the Thornton driveway. Leo's vision was sharp. He could just make out a middle-aged man in a suit getting into the back seat. That had to be her father, Richard Thornton. As the SUV drove away, Leo's eyes narrowed. He immediately stood up and walked back toward the Thornton property. As night fell, The house was enveloped in a profound silence. Leo, his scarf pulled up high, moved silently to the base of the perimeter wall. He had no intention of giving up. He hadn't misunderstood Landon's warning at all. In fact, he agreed with it completely. If he were discovered, Isabel would suffer all the consequences. And still, he was going to climb. He knew that despite her cool exterior, Isabel was more sensitive than most people. She was insecure when it came to their love. This wall, standing between them, wasn't just a wall anymore. For them, it was a symbol of society's constraints, the shackles of class, the barrier between their two different worlds. He had to climb it. He had to prove to her that she wasn't fighting this battle alone. With that thought, Leo looked up at the wall, took a few steps back, and drew a deep breath. He broke into a sprint. Just before reaching the wall, he leaped with all his might, his hands catching the top edge at the perfect moment. With a powerful heave, he vaulted himself over. He landed silently, quickly scanned the area, and seeing no one, cautiously dropped into the yard. Using the faint ambient light, he tried to get his bearings. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching. Panicked, Leo desperately looked for a place to hide, but the massive yard was nothing but an empty, manicured lawn along the wall. There was absolutely nowhere to go. His heart sank into his stomach. It's over. Just as Leo's heart hammered against his ribs, convinced he was about to be caught, a familiar bark echoed from behind him. Woof! He whipped his head around. In the faint moonlight, he saw a fluffy white Samoyed trotting happily toward him, its tail wagging like a metronome on overdrive. It was Buttercream. Who else? Buttercream, you scared the hell out of me, Leo whispered, a mix of shock and relief flooding him as he dropped into a crouch. The dog reached him and immediately started rubbing against his leg. Its eyes squinted in delight and a low whine rumbling in its throat, as if recounting how much it had missed him. Good boy, Buttercream. You play out here for a minute, okay? I'm going to find your big sister. Don't make a sound. As if it understood every word, Buttercream immediately quieted down. It then panted, its tongue lolling out toward a lit window on the second floor. Seeing that, Leo was even more certain. That had to be Isabel's room, but it was on the second floor. To get in, he'd have to climb up from the ground. Luckily, the window was on the opposite side of the house from the main gate. As long as the guards up front didn't decide to take a stroll, they'd never see him. He scanned the area, and his eyes landed on a large, leafy tree near the wall. One of its branches stretched diagonally, reaching right up toward the second-floor roof. He could climb the tree, walk along the branch to the roof, and then knock on her window. It was the perfect climbing route. Her dad probably never imagined the tree he planted in his own yard would become the best tool for sneaking into his daughter's room. Leo mused. He crouched down, gave Buttercream a final pat on the head, and then carefully approached the tree. Back in middle school, he and Kevin Xiong used to climb over the wall behind the abandoned gym equipment room to sneak out and hit the arcade. Getting back in required climbing the big willow tree next to the school wall. Leo's tree climbing and wall scaling skills were, to put it mildly, well honed. He wrapped his arms around the trunk, his feet finding purchase on the rough bark, and began to climb. With each upward movement, the branches swayed slightly, emitting a faint creak. He moved as quietly as possible, his eyes fixed on the window, glowing with warm light. Just as he reached a good height and prepared to step onto the branch leading to the roof, he heard a faint voice call out from below. Leo froze instantly, not daring to breathe. He pressed himself against the trunk, trying to make himself as small as possible. In the dim light, it would be hard to spot him unless someone was looking right up. A moment later, a middle-aged woman came into view. She was clearly one of the household staff. She saw Buttercream on the lawn and started to complain. Buttercream, don't be running around so late. Come on back inside. It's time for your dinner. Woof, woof. Buttercream barked twice at the woman, then trotted after her, tail wagging. The dog never once looked toward the tree. The woman, naturally, didn't notice Leo either. Once the yard was quiet again, Leo finally let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He took a moment to steady himself, then looked back at the branch. Taking a deep breath, he slowly extended his foot, testing its strength. Once he was sure it would hold his weight, he took the first step, shifting his center of gravity. The branch creaked more noticeably under his feet, as if warning him of the danger. Leo ignored it. Holding his breath, he made his way across the branch and onto the roof of the second floor. He carefully flattened himself against the shingles, taking a moment to calm his racing heart. Then, he crept silently toward the window. Thankfully, Isabel hadn't drawn her curtains. When Leo reached the window, he saw her immediately. She was sitting at her desk, a book open in her hands, but her mind seemed to be miles away. Her face was etched with worry. Knock, knock, knock. Isabel started at the sound, her head snapping up. The moment she saw Leo's face outside her window, a look of pure, unadulterated joy flashed in her eyes, which immediately welled up with tears. She scrambled from her chair and rushed to the window, sliding it open. Leo, how did you get up here? This is the second floor. You could have been killed if you fell, she whispered, her voice a mixture of scolding and overwhelming concern. I told you I was coming to New York to find you, he said with a soft smile. It wouldn't count if I didn't actually find you, right? Isabel bit her lip, forcing back the tears. You idiot. Get in here quick. Leo nodded. He couldn't stay out here forever. He had her step back, then swung one leg over the sill and into her bedroom. The first thing Isabel did was pull the curtains shut. The second was to throw her arms around his waist and hold on for dear life, the tears finally streaming down her face. Leo, I've missed you so much. I know you miss me. That's why I'm here, he chuckled, trying to keep the mood light. She sobbed quietly into his chest. After a long moment, she slowly pulled away, her eyes red as she asked again. Seriously, how did you get up here? Your dad has that big tree in the yard, right? I just climbed it. He couldn't help but add with a smirk. I bet he never thought the tree he planted would one day be the biggest help in getting me into your room. He meant it as a joke, something to lighten the oppressive mood she'd been living with all week. He never expected that, upon hearing his explanation, she would completely break down. That tree. Isabel choked out between sobs. My mother planted it before she died. That tree. My mother planted it before she died. The words hit Leo like a physical blow. The smile froze on his face, replaced by a complex storm of emotions. Suddenly, he understood why Isabel had to have this specific room. It was probably the only one with a view of the tree her mother had planted. He couldn't believe it. The very tree that had been his pathway to her was rooted in such a profound, sorrowful memory. I'm sorry, he said, his voice laced with guilt. If I'd known it was your mom's tree, I never would have climbed it. To him, it felt deeply disrespectful now. This tree was sacred to her. He instinctively raised his hand to wipe away her tears, but then hesitated, letting it hang in midair. Isabel shook her head, sniffling. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and pressed her cheek against his suspended hand. A warm, sad smile touched her lips. No, it's okay. I don't mind that you climbed it. It's just, seeing you come from that tree, it suddenly made me think of my mom, of the time when she was still here. Her voice broke again, tears flowing freely. Maybe it was destiny, she whispered. Maybe when my mom planted that tree all those years ago, she was preparing it for today. Hearing that, Leo felt a sting in his own eyes. He gently pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, his gaze drifting back to the tree outside the window. Only now did he notice it wasn't particularly thick or sturdy. At first glance, it didn't look like it could support the weight of a 165-pound adult. And yet it had. It had held him. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was destiny. Maybe it wasn't the branch that had borne his weight, but a mother's undying love for her daughter. A long time passed before Isabel's emotions finally settled. Her eyes were still red, and she was dressed in simple loungewear, having been cooped up inside for so long. The former Ice Queen looked fragile, vulnerable, and heartbreakingly lovely. Leo, don't ever climb that high again. It's too dangerous. He nodded seriously. They sat on her bed and talked for a while. At one point, Leo got animated, his voice rising slightly. Isabel frowned and tapped his arm, chiding him in a low voice, quieter. Why are we whispering? It's not like I left my vocal cords at home. He grumbled, referencing a line from a movie he liked. Isabel pouted, glancing at her locked bedroom door. This isn't Crestview. The staff here are loyal to my father and my stepmother. If they find you, they'll tell them immediately. Yikes. Okay, I'll be quieter, Leo said, instantly lowering his voice. He remembered what Landon had said about Lester. Hey, Landon told me that after Lester brought you back from the Ozarks, your dad demoted him? He's just a regular driver now. Isabel nodded, guilt shadowing her face. Lester could have retired years ago, but he stayed on to look after me. Now he's been demoted because of me. What if he came to work at my studio? Leo asked tentatively. A loyal man like him. It's an insult to make him a pool driver. I know the salary isn't the point for him anymore, but having to face that every day must be awful for his pride. Lester was one of the few people who genuinely cared for Isabel, and Leo couldn't stand seeing him end up like this. He figured he could bring him to Starfall Studios as his personal driver, at least on paper. In reality, he'd just let him collect a salary and enjoy a quiet retirement. But Isabel shook her head firmly. No, he doesn't need to. He was only demoted because we're in New York. When we go back to Crestview, he's still the most respected driver in the family. Leo was taken aback. He'd rarely seen such a resolute expression on her face. Okay, yeah, she murmured, her expression softening again. Landon left this afternoon. You've been waiting around the neighborhood this whole time, haven't you? Yeah, he said your dad was home, so I just staked out that little park across the street. I climbed over as soon as I saw him leave. Are you hungry? I can go get you something to eat. She was already slipping on her slippers, ready to go. Leo didn't refuse. He'd been sitting outside all afternoon and was starving. For a second, he felt a strange sense of déjà vu, like he was some punk kid on a dirt bike who just snuck into the prom queen's house. Now, she was going to go steal her dad's expensive scotch for him. He shuddered at the thought. Nope, I'm definitely having sons. Having a daughter is too dangerous. Look at this, a guy as rich as her dad, with all these guards and staff, and he still can't stop some punk from climbing into his daughter's bedroom. A few minutes later, Isabel returned with a plate of pastries, breaking him out of his reverie. She handed them to him and then sat cross-legged on the bed, looking utterly content as she watched him eat, her pretty, bright eyes fixed on him. The longer she watched, the more intense her gaze became. She bit her lip and said, a meaningful glint in her eyes, Leo, it's getting pretty late. It's impossible to get a cab from here. Leo was so hungry that he was focused only on the food, completely missing the true meaning behind her words. Oh, it's fine, he mumbled through a mouthful of pastry. When I leave, I'll just call Landon. He can pick me up. I've got some studio business to discuss with him anyway. Oh, is it really important? Urgent. It's important, but not that urgent. The original plan was to hang out with you in New York for a few days before talking to him. But since you can't leave the house, I figured I'd see you and then go deal with it. He swallowed the bite, the pastry suddenly dry in his throat. Without thinking, he reached for the glass on her desk and chugged the water inside. He wasn't sure if it was just his imagination, but even plain water tasted sweeter from her glass. Isabel watched him, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Leo, Landon has plans tonight. He can't pick you up. Huh? He didn't mention anything to me. Leo instinctively checked his phone. No new messages. A small smile played on Isabel's lips. She got up, walked over to the window, and engaged the security lock. If I say he has plans, she said quietly, he has plans. Basically, you're not going anywhere tonight. Leo froze, the gears in his head finally clicking into place. She was planning to hide him in her room for the night. His expression shifted, and his heart started hammering against his ribs. A thrilling, illicit excitement shot through him. Ahem, is that a good idea? What if one of your maids comes in and finds me? Then we'd be. No one is allowed in my room without my permission. Isabel cut him off. But what about food? I haven't been eating much at night these past few days. I'll just have them leave my dinner outside the door. I'll bring it in for you. No one will suspect a thing. Leo stared at her, at a loss for words. He seriously suspected that the moment he climbed through her window, she had already started plotting how to keep him here. Before he could protest again, Isabel's lips formed a pout, her expression turning pitiable. What? Is it so terrible to have to stay with me? I'm staying. I am absolutely staying, Leo declared instantly. He was utterly defenseless against her pouting. The girl was normally so cool and composed. It was only when they were alone together that she would occasionally reveal this cute, coquettish side. The contrast was enough to disarm any man, even a self-proclaimed Sigma male like himself. Anyone would get baited by that. Once she had his firm agreement, Isabel's mood visibly brightened. She bit her lip to hide a smile, grabbed her laptop from the desk, and returned to the bed. After a few minutes of scrolling, she found a movie she was happy with. Then she turned and patted the empty space beside her. Leo got the message. He took off his jacket and shoes and settled in next to her. The moment he sat down, a sweet fragrance filled his senses. He realized this was the first time he'd ever been in a bed she had been sleeping in for a whole week straight. Not at the Maplewood, not even at the Thornton estate had it been like this. He rubbed his nose, asking with a hint of curiosity, "How are you girls always so fragrant? It's like you've been marinated in it. Even your bed smells like you." Isabel tilted her chin up, answering his slightly weird question without a hint of hesitation. "You stay with me long enough, and you'll smell good, too." For the next 2 hours, they lay on the bed watching the movie on her laptop. If this had been his apartment at the Maplewood, Leo figured he would have already broken through her defenses and had her curled up in his arms. But this was her house in New York. More importantly, her father could return from work at any moment. So Leo's courage was about the size of a mouse's. Several times during the movie, Isabel tried to subtly snuggle closer, but each time, Leo would shift, breaking her advance. Even though she'd assured him no one would come in, he couldn't shake the nervous, guilty feeling. His heart thumped a frantic rhythm, never once slowing down. This must be what they talk about online, he thought. The first time at your girlfriend's house. Even when her parents aren't home, you're still a nervous wreck. By the time the movie ended, it was after 9. Worried he was hungry again, Isabel had a maid bring dinner to her door, which she then brought inside herself. So there Leo was, eating dinner in her room while she sat across from him, her arms folded on the table and her chin resting in her hands, a gentle smile on her face as she watched him. Her gaze was practically a physical touch, and the unspoken message was clear. Little Leo, you've finished your dinner. So tonight, it's my turn to eat you. Leo was horrified. I don't have anything on me that you can eat. Ahem, don't look at me like that. I feel like a lamb in a tiger's den, he stammered. Right, what if your dad comes back tonight and wants to talk to you? He'd come in your room, right? Then he'd definitely find me. Isabel, still propping her chin on her hands, replied, no. Usually when Dad wants to talk, he calls me to the living room. Unless it's a really serious heart-to-heart. Leo was still on edge, his mind conjuring 1,000 scenarios of being discovered. But what if tonight's the night for a heart-to-heart? At that, Isabel shook her head, her eyes dimming slightly. After a long pause, she said with a touch of sadness, Dad hasn't had a real heart-to-heart with me in a very long time. Don't be too sad. Your dad... Leo hadn't even finished his sentence when a sharp knock echoed from the door. Knock, knock, knock. Isabel, are you asleep? It's Dad. I'd like to talk to you. Holy crap. The sudden voice made Leo's heart seize in his chest, nearly leaping out of his throat. Panic flared in his eyes as he shot a helpless look at Isabel, feeling like a cornered animal. He mouthed silently. You said he wouldn't come to your room. Isabel was just as shocked, her face paling with tension. She never would have guessed that her father, who hadn't had a real conversation with her in years, would choose tonight, the night after they'd had a huge fight, to have a heart-to-heart. Flustered, she called out, her voice tight. What is it, Dad? Nothing much. I just want to talk. What are you doing? I'm changing. Just a minute, Dad. Isabel stalled, but the panic on her face was impossible to hide. Leo was panicking too. He wasn't actually afraid of meeting her father, but like Landon had said, if he was discovered now, Isabel would be the one to suffer the consequences. Not to mention, he was in her room because he'd snuck in like a thief. If her dad found out, it would create a disastrous first impression for his future father-in-law. He quickly grabbed his shoes, planning to make a break for the window. But when he pulled back the curtain, he saw the household staff gathered in the yard below. It looked like the evening shift change, with the head butler giving instructions. Damn it, I can't go back the way I came, Leo whispered. Isabel glanced out the window, her brow furrowing. Then, biting her lip, she quickly made a shushing gesture at Leo. Taking his hand, she led him to her large, built-in closet. She opened the door and urged him in a hushed, frantic tone. Hide in here. You should leave soon. Okay, right. Leo didn't hesitate. He clutched his shoes and scrambled inside. Luckily, it was a massive walk-in closet. Even at 6'1", Leo could fit, though he had to bend his knees into an uncomfortable crouch. Once he was hidden, Isabel whispered, don't make a sound. If Dad finds you in here, we're finished. Don't worry. Not a peep, Leo promised. She gave a worried nod and closed the closet door. Even with the door shut, Leo noticed a thin vertical gap remained between the two panels. Through it, he could vaguely make out the room. He couldn't help a bitter smile, hiding in his girlfriend's closet from her father. It was the kind of cliché he'd only ever seen in memes online. He never thought he'd actually live it. He watched as Isabel took a deep breath, preparing to go to the door. But just as her hand reached the knob, she seemed to remember something and quickly backed away. She went to a different closet, pulled out a pink nightgown, and turned her back to Leo. The next second, her hands gripped the hem of the shirt she was wearing and slowly lifted it up. Just like that, the smooth, pale expanse of Isabel's back was completely exposed to his view. Leo's face flushed a deep crimson. It was the first time he'd ever seen her reveal so much of herself. He tried to look away, but his eyes seemed glued to the spot. His heart hammered against his ribs, the sound deafening in his ears. She quickly slipped the pink nightgown on. Leo could see her shoulders trembling slightly. She must have known he could see her. The trembling was a testament to her own nervous embarrassment. She let the nightgown fall, covering her long legs, and ran her fingers through her slightly messy hair, making herself look more comfortably disheveled. The reason for her actions hit Leo instantly. His girlfriend was a damn genius. Her father had seen her in her day clothes before he left that afternoon. If he came in now and she was still wearing the same outfit, a man as meticulous as him might get suspicious. Damn, she's smart. Having completed her preparations, Isabel took another deep breath to calm her nerves, then walked to the door and slowly turned the handle. The door opened. Richard Thornton stood there, his gaze soft as he looked at his daughter. "Dad, what's up?" Isabel asked, her voice steady and her expression carefully neutral. Seeing her cold demeanor, Richard's brow furrowed for a second before smoothing out. "What were you doing?" he asked after a moment. "Still awake this late?" "I just finished a movie. I haven't washed up yet." "It's still early. I'm not tired," she replied evenly, though her palms were slick with sweat. Richard didn't seem to notice anything amiss. "Is that so? May I come in and sit for a bit?" Isabel's first instinct was to say no, but fearing it would look suspicious, she hesitated before stepping aside. "Sure, come in, Dad." As Richard Thornton entered the room, Leo got his first up-close look at the man. He looked a little different from the photos Leo had seen online. He noticed that Isabel's mouth and eyes were remarkably similar to her father's, though Richard's gaze was far deeper, as if it could see right through you. Richard pulled out her desk chair to sit, but as he did, his eyes fell upon the empty plate and utensils Leo had used for dinner. His brow tightened. He looked sharply at Isabel. "Isabel, has someone else been in your room?" The question hung in the air. Hiding in the closet, Leo instantly held his breath, his heart rocketing into his throat. "Isabel, has someone else been in your room?" Richard Thornton asked, his gaze fixed on the dinner plate, his expression suspicious. From his hiding spot, Leo saw Isabel's body tense for a split second, but she recovered instantly, her tone perfectly level as she asked, "Why would you say that?" Richard gestured to the plate. "You've hardly eaten any dinner since you got back to New York. Why so much tonight?" Leo's heart hammered. Of course, her father would have noticed a change in her routine. He suddenly regretted eating so much. His appetite was easily 3 times hers. The portion size was obviously not for a girl who'd been picking at her food. His heart pounded as he watched her, ready to step out of the closet and confess if she couldn't talk her way out of it. But Isabel remained calm. "Dad, is it really so surprising that I'm hungry? Besides, if I had a friend over, why wouldn't I bring them downstairs to eat?" I suppose I was overthinking it," Richard conceded, the suspicion finally fading from his face. "You having a good appetite should make me happy." He fell silent. Leo let out a silent breath of relief. At the same time, a strange feeling washed over him. This was the first time he'd seen Isabel interact with someone else from a third-person perspective. The composure and maturity she displayed were a world away from the girl he knew. For a fleeting moment, it felt like he was watching a completely different person. As the silence in the room stretched on, Leo's tense muscles finally began to relax. It was then that he became aware of a delicate fragrance filling his nostrils. Peering through the crack in the closet door, he saw that he was surrounded by her clothes, specifically her underwear and bras. Holy hell! His eyes widened in shock. He was crouched in the section of her closet dedicated to her most intimate apparel. "So, that thing that was brushing against my face earlier was..." He swallowed hard, turning his head slightly. A black lace bra hung innocently just inches from his cheek. He quickly looked away, feeling a warmth spread through his sinuses. Just as his thoughts began to wander, Isabel's voice cut through the silence. "Dad, what did you want to talk about?" "If it's nothing, I'm going to get ready for bed." "Wait," Richard said. He pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and took one out. He had just placed it between his lips when he remembered where he was and awkwardly removed it. He paused, then said with a sigh, "Isabel, I hope you don't blame me for grounding you and taking your phone. I just want you to take this time to reflect. As your father, everything I do is for your own good. Dad, I don't think I have anything to reflect on. You still think it's right for you to be with that Leo Yeager kid?" Richard's voice rose. Hearing his own name, Leo's stomach dropped. Just as he'd expected, her father was vehemently opposed to their relationship. Isabel's brow furrowed. "Why is it wrong?" "The only reason you disapprove is because his family isn't wealthy. But when you first met Mom, you didn't have this huge company either. You were just an ordinary person, same as Leo. Your mother and I were different. We both came from ordinary families. There was no class disparity. But you and this Leo, you're from different worlds. Your values, your views on life, they're on completely different levels. That's why I object." Richard's voice grew more forceful. "Besides, he doesn't even come from a complete family." The word stung. Isabel's displeasure was palpable. She met her father's gaze without flinching. "Dad, class and money aren't reasons to stop 2 people from being in love. Leo may come from a simple background, but he's hardworking, ambitious, and has his own dreams. And as for his family, that's not his fault. It's made him more independent and mature than anyone else's age." Richard's frown deepened. "Isabel, you're young. You don't see things clearly. Love isn't everything. Marriage is a merger of two families. You can't ignore these practicalities. I admit his circumstances aren't his fault, but his mistake was stubbornly pursuing a relationship with you in the first place. If he were truly mature, he would have known from the beginning that the right choice was to stay away from you. Hiding in the closet, hearing Richard's blunt assessment, Leo felt a swirl of conflicting emotions. Her father wasn't being malicious, not really. He was just stating facts, and Leo could even understand his concern for his daughter's future. If he were in Richard's shoes, he wasn't sure he'd handle it any better. A sense of powerlessness washed over him. Isabel knew Leo could hear every word. Her response now was a declaration of her own commitment to their relationship. She took a deep breath. Dad, I know you mean well. I've listened to you my entire life. But this one time, I want to make my own decision. I want to be with Leo. And I know that one day, sooner than you think, he will make you see him differently. Richard looked at his daughter's stubborn face, momentarily speechless. He let out a long, weary sigh. Isabel, you don't have to fight me on this. Being with a boy like that will only cause you to lose yourself. You're not just anyone. You're my only daughter, and everything I've built will one day be yours. Thornton Industries is a massive entity. You can't manage it alone. From any angle, finding a partner who matches your status and vision would be better for you, in love and in business. He could give you more support and a better life than Leo ever could. Isabel's lips thinned, her tone turning icy. But isn't Mother about to have a baby? She's going to give you a son. The company. Why wouldn't you give it to him? Why does it have to be me? Richard stared at her, stunned. He had asked the private doctor about the baby's gender, but he never imagined Isabel would find out. Isabel, he said after a long pause, if your brother were your age, perhaps I would consider it. But he will be nearly 20 years younger than you. I can't wait that long. The company. It will be yours to inherit. Dad, you're so naive, Isabel thought, a cold certainty settling in her heart. How could you think for a second that she would ever let me inherit what she believes belongs to her child? The thought sent a shiver down Leo's spine. He just stumbled upon a massive, dangerous secret. Isabel said nothing more to her father, simply turning to look out the window, her expression unreadable. Richard disliked being ignored. Isabel, do you understand what I'm saying? I understand, she said quietly, but I don't want to. What does that mean? He snapped. Suddenly, Isabel's voice choked, and 2 tears streamed down her cheeks. Dad, you've almost forgotten Mom, haven't you? I don't want to become like you. I know everything you're doing is for my own good, to continue the family legacy. But when I think about becoming you, I don't want any part of it. After the company got big, you stopped thinking about Mom, and you barely thought about me. Right now, I just want to be with Leo. I want to live a normal life with him. Hearing Leo's name for the 3rd time, Richard finally exploded. He slammed his hand on the desk, his voice a roar. Leo, is that all you can think about? Tell me, what is it you like so much about that poor, ordinary kid? Hiding in the closet, Leo jumped at the sudden outburst. Startled, he held his breath, his eyes fixed on Isabel. In truth, he'd always been a little curious himself. He knew their connection had started with a small act of kindness in their childhood, a seed of love planted in her heart. But that was just a seed. He never felt he'd done enough to make it grow. Isabel didn't flinch from her father's rage. She stared right back at him, tears welling in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Dad, maybe in your world, someone is only worthy of respect or attention if they can provide you with something, just like Sharon does. She took a shaky breath. But Dad, that's not love. Real love is. If you've never seen the world, they show you everything. And if you're tired of the world, they take you on a merry-go-round. Her voice trembled, thick with emotion. But Leo, he's shown me the world, and he's taken me on the merry-go-round. How could I possibly not love him? The words struck Richard silent, his face flashing with a mixture of anger and something else, shame. He was thrown back to the early days with his first wife, Catherine. They used to watch sunrises together, walk on the beach, do 1,000 small, romantic things. But as the business grew, he lost himself in the world of profit and power, and those beautiful memories had faded. After Catherine died, it was as if he'd forgotten that part of himself entirely. But the thought was fleeting. His second wife, Sharon, was about to give him a son. The past was the past. Seeing her father's silence, Isabel's own fierce emotion dissipated, leaving only exhaustion behind. She wiped her tears. Dad, I'm tired. I want to rest. Isabel, he stopped, letting out a heavy sigh. Fine. You will spend your winter break at home. When you finally come to your senses, then you can leave the house. With that, Richard Thornton stood up and left the room. Isabel watched him go, her heart a tangled mess of emotions. The strength seemed to drain out of her all at once. She staggered backward and collapsed onto the edge of her bed, her eyes vacant and lost. Seeing her like that, Leo finally emerged from the closet. He walked quietly to her side, sat down, and gently pulled her into his arms. Isabel melted against him, as if he were her only anchor, burying her face in his chest and sobbing silently. Leo's mind was reeling, replaying her words over and over. If you've never seen the world, they show you everything. And if you're tired of the world, they take you on the merry-go-round. He never realized. Her understanding of love was so deep, so nuanced, in a way he himself had never grasped. After a long time, Isabel finally looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Leo," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "Was I too harsh? I shouldn't have spoken to my dad like that." Leo gently shook his head. "You weren't wrong. You just told him how you really feel. And he's not wrong either, not really. His intentions are good, just extreme." He sighed, a helpless feeling creeping in. "This is on me. If I were already at a level he could respect, none of this would be happening." Isabel didn't speak, just tightened her grip on his hand. Leo fell silent, too. They both knew the truth about love. It often comes with a feeling of indebtedness. And right now, each of them felt they owed the other the world. They sat like that for what felt like an eternity, his hand growing slick with sweat in hers. Then, suddenly, Isabel stood up. She walked to the door, slid the bolt lock into place, and then, on her way back, flipped off the lights, plunging the room into darkness. Oof! The next thing Leo knew, Isabel had climbed into his lap, straddling him. In the dark, her hot, desperate mouth found his. The sudden kiss in the darkness sent a jolt through Leo, accelerating his heart to a frantic pace. The warm, soft pressure of her lips short-circuited his brain, leaving him with nothing but pure sensation. Seconds later, he could feel the warmth of her breath, hear her soft, ragged gasps. This kiss was different. It was filled with a desperate longing and dependence, a hint of suppressed desire, as if she were trying to pour all the frustration and pain of the past week into this single act. It was nothing like their secret kisses in the grove back on campus. When his senses finally returned, Leo's hands instinctively wrapped around her waist. He could feel her body trembling slightly as he began to kiss her back. Suddenly, Isabel pulled away, their foreheads resting against each other, their hurried breaths mingling in the small space between them. The fire she had ignited in him was now roaring, and Leo found himself losing control. He took a deep breath, and in one fluid motion, stood up, lifting her with him. Isabel let out a small gasp, her body tensing as her legs instinctively wrapped around his waist. Leo carried her the few steps to the bed and gently laid her down. He couldn't hold back anymore. He pressed down on her soft body, his hands beginning their familiar exploration. But then he felt something. The way she responded to his kiss was hesitant, a flicker of resistance quickly replaced by a yielding that felt more like surrender. As he moved to take the next step, the hand propping him up by her neck suddenly felt a single, hot drop of liquid. He froze. He tentatively reached up, his fingers brushing against her cheek. He knew instantly what it was. A tear. Shocked, Leo pushed himself up. At that moment, a gust of wind blew in from the open window, rustling the curtains and allowing a sliver of moonlight to slice through the darkness. In that faint glow, he could see her face. It was beautiful, heartbreaking, and streaked with tears. She was biting her lip, her eyes shimmering as she looked up at him. The sight extinguished the fire within him as effectively as a bucket of ice water. His rational mind took over. He finally understood. Her sudden passion wasn't just about desire. It was about insecurity. She was terrified that her situation, her father's disapproval, would push him away. This was her desperate, emotional attempt to prove her commitment, to bind him to her. Her brief hesitation, that feeling of reluctant acceptance, was her inner conflict playing out. Leo took a deep breath and immediately rolled off her. He stood up and switched on the lamp. Isabel sat up, her hair a mess. She bit her lip and said nothing, just watched him with a complicated, questioning gaze. He could see the flush of genuine passion on her cheeks. He hadn't been the only one who had wanted to go further. He took a step toward her, intending to hold her, to offer comfort. But she gently pushed him away. "Don't you want me?" she whispered. "I do," he said honestly. "It's not just physical, it's everything. No guy would ever say no to the girl he loves more than anything." Her expression crumpled. "But you did say no." He didn't deny it. He walked over to her desk, pulled a tissue from the box, and gently dabbed at her tear-stained cheeks. "I want it to happen," he said softly, but I want it to be in a situation where you feel completely safe and secure. Not like this, where you feel like you have to prove your commitment to me. And that's my fault. If I'd given you enough security, you'd trust me completely. You would never think that some words from the outside world could make me leave you. Isabel listened quietly, fresh tears blurring her vision. But this time, they were tears of relief and gratitude. She looked down, her fingers twisting the hem of her nightgown. "Leo, I'm just so scared of losing you," she choked out. "My dad's attitude. It makes our future feel so uncertain." "I will work my ass off to make our future certain," he promised. Isabel didn't reply, just nodded and wrapped her arms around his waist again, holding him tightly. A long time passed before her turbulent emotions finally settled. Just as Leo was about to say something, she looked up, her tone reverting to its usual cool clarity. "Leo, you only touched one side again." He coughed. My bad. I'll switch it up next time." That night, Leo showered and brushed his teeth in Isabel's en-suite bathroom. They spoke in hushed tones, terrified of being discovered by her father. It was only when they were finally tucked in her bed together, under one blanket, that a comfortable silence fell between them. "Damn it, my hand is on her leg, and I physically can't move it," Leo thought, panicking slightly. "Her skin is so impossibly smooth. Why do my legs feel like I'm wearing wool pants?" It was Isabel who finally broke the silence. She snuggled closer, her voice soft with guilt. "Leo, I won't be able to go back to Crestview to spend Christmas with you." His first reaction was a pang of disappointment. He had been imagining, for the first time, not spending the holidays alone. The fantasy shattered, leaving a small ache. But it passed quickly. "That's okay," he replied immediately. "Even if your dad hadn't grounded you, you need to stay in New York to be with your family for Christmas anyway." "But what about you?" "Me? I'll be fine. I'll crash Kevin's family dinner on Christmas Eve, then make the rounds to Miles's and Mr. Wallace's houses over the next couple days. After that, I'll be buried in work for the studio. It'll be busy." His tone was light and easy. Isabel just murmured and held him tighter. Soon, her breathing evened out, and she fell asleep in his arms, feeling completely safe. Leo watched her sleeping peacefully in his arms, a gentle smile playing on his lips. He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, carefully shifting his position to make her more comfortable before letting sleep claim him as well. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the window, waking them both. Leo opened his eyes to see Isabel's face just inches from his and couldn't help but smile. "Morning," he whispered. "Morning," she replied, her voice husky with sleep. A shy blush crept across her makeup-free cheeks. They didn't indulge in the movie-style morning cuddling. Even if she didn't mind his morning breath, he certainly minded his own. A make-out session before brushing his teeth? The thought alone was nauseating. While Leo was in the bathroom, he heard Isabel's father in the yard below, speaking to a driver. He peeked through the window and watched until he was sure Richard Thornton had left, then breathed a sigh of relief. It was time for him to go, too. He couldn't stay hidden in her room forever. It was only a matter of time before he was discovered. Around 10, Leo texted Landon, asking him to swing by the neighborhood when he had a chance. With the message sent, he checked the yard one last time to make sure it was empty, then prepared to climb back out the window. Before he left, Isabel pouted and threw her arms around him. "Leo, I guess this means I'll see you next year." "You could say that," he laughed, "but it's just a saying. It's only a couple of weeks until the new semester starts. We'll be seeing each other every day then. But I can't even contact you when you go back." Leo thought for a moment, then pulled his phone from his pocket and offered it to her. "Then keep this one. I'll buy a new one. Just hide it well so your dad doesn't find it." She shook her head. "No. If he found it and realized it was yours, he'd confiscate it and learn everything about you." He paused. He hadn't thought of that. He was rubbing his chin, trying to come up with another solution, when Isabel suddenly looked up at him, her eyes wide and expectant. "Wait, don't you have a backup phone? You could just leave me your backup." Leo froze, instinctively clamping his legs together, a look of pure terror on his face. He swallowed hard, his voice strained. "Are you kidding me? You know exactly what my backup phone's." It's a phone, right?" she asked, blinking with a cool, innocent expression. Leo was sure she was messing with him. He reached out and pinched her soft cheek. "You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? You nearly made me activate my backup phone last night, and now you're telling me you don't know what it is? Don't play dumb with me. I know how smart you are." "Leo, I've always been kind of silly, not smart at all," she said, batting his hand away with a pitiable look. He looked at her feigned innocence, torn between irritation and adoration. He knew she was just trying to delay his departure. He leaned in, cupped her face in his hands, and gave her a firm kiss. Then he ruffled her hair. I have to go. If one of your maids sees me and tells your dad, it'll be even longer before we can see each other. The kiss had left her slightly dazed. She bit her lip, then gave him a small wave, her voice full of worry. Leo, be careful. Phew. After climbing out of the Thornton property, Leo let out a long breath. He looked back up at the second-floor window and saw Isabel still standing there. He smiled, waved, and then started walking toward the community's main gate. He waited for a few minutes before Landon's Lamborghini came into view. It was a different one today, a bright orange model instead of yesterday's fluorescent green. Leo, get in. Oh, yeah, okay. Leo hopped into the passenger seat. After they had driven a fair distance, Leo said sheepishly, Aren't you curious why I didn't come back last night? You obviously stayed over in Isabel's room, right? You don't seem very surprised, Leo said, looking at him. Landon just smiled faintly. I am and I'm not. On one hand, the Isabel I know, even though she's not as cold with me as she is with strangers, would never let a guy spend the night in her room. Not even her boyfriend. But on the other hand, if that guy is you, then I'm not surprised at all. Because even if you weren't her boyfriend, I think she'd still find a way to keep you there overnight. Your logic is a little confusing. Landon laughed. Okay, maybe I've been abroad too long, and my philosophical ramblings have gotten a bit muddled. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that she truly sees you as the most important person in her life. Leo nodded, silent for a moment before saying, Landon, let's find a place to talk about Starfall Studios. No problem. Want to just go to my place? Landon's Lamborghini tore through the streets toward his family's villa. Along the way, Leo's thoughts shifted from Isabel to the studio. He knew the upcoming Christmas and New Year's holidays were a golden opportunity. If Starfall could produce a few viral hits during that time, they would make a name for themselves in the industry overnight. Then, the talent they couldn't poach with money would come flocking to them. The studio's growth would accelerate, and he would be one step closer to closing the gap between himself and the Thorntons. Soon, they arrived at the Archer Villa. It was every bit as grand as the Thorntons' place, perhaps even more so. It dawned on Leo that Landon's family might be even wealthier than Isabel's. Landon led him into a spacious, light-filled living room, poured him a cup of fragrant tea, and then sat down on the sofa, his gaze sharp and focused. All right, Leo, tell me your ideas for Starfall Studios. So, you want me to be the one who suggests to Sean that Starfall needs to start poaching talent? Landon Archer asked, his brow furrowed slightly after he'd quietly listened to Leo's proposal. Leo nodded. Exactly. We had already discussed the plan to recruit experienced editors. But while I was in the Ozarks dealing with the donation and ended up in the hospital after the earthquake, Sean took the opportunity to shut the whole thing down. Technically, as a partner with veto power, I could force a vote. But we've already gone down that road once. Doing it again would be a slap in the face to Sean. He's the original founder, after all. I don't want things to get that ugly. Landon was silent for a moment before speaking in a low voice. Leo, this isn't a difficult request. One phone call, and I can get Shauna back down. But if you're serious about making Starfall a major player, you need to solve this internal friction sooner rather than later. From what you've told me, you two consistently disagree on major decisions that could fuel rapid growth. If this were one of my companies, I could mediate a disagreement once, maybe twice. But after the second time, I would immediately remove the person causing the obstruction. He paused, his gaze intensifying. So, Leo, you need to Landon, I get it. Leo cut him off gently. I have my own plan. He knew what Landon was suggesting. Force Sean out, or at the very least, dilute his influence until it was negligible. Otherwise, these fundamental disagreements would keep happening. The last two incidents had made it clear that he and Sean had fundamentally different visions. A successful company, especially during a growth phase, couldn't afford to have two competing voices at the helm. Leo had considered ousting Sean, but not now. Starfall was on the cusp of becoming a legitimate corporation, and Ruby, Don, and Quinn were all close with Sean. If he forced Sean out now, he couldn't guarantee the other three wouldn't cause trouble. So he was waiting for the right moment. Leo, if you're not planning to remove him, then I don't recommend I make the suggestion directly, Landon said, shifting his strategy. He'll immediately know you and I spoke, and your relationship will sour even further. How about this? I'll have a talk with him, frame it as a need for professionalization. I'll mandate that Starfall must have a certain number of editors with proven experience at creating viral content. I'll even offer to place a few of my own people there, with their salaries covered by me. To save on expenses, Sean will have no choice but to come back to you and restart the conversation about recruiting those editors you wanted. Leo's eyes widened in surprise. He hadn't thought of that angle at all. Landon's approach wouldn't just avoid conflict. It might actually make Sean appreciate Leo's foresight. And if Sean finally, genuinely accepted that Leo's vision was what Starfall needed, then the whole issue of forcing him out could be tabled indefinitely. Okay, Leo said, impressed. Let's do it your way. Good. I'll have my assistant arrange it in the next few days. It'll be done before Christmas Eve. Landon smiled. Business is over. Since Isabel can't get away, let me show you some New York hospitality. I'll take you out to dinner. All right, Leo agreed. But I have to head back to Crestview tomorrow. No problem. I'll take you to the airport. After spending half a day with Landon, Leo woke up the next morning and was driven personally to the airport. Wearing the blue scarf Isabel had knitted for him, he boarded the flight back to Crestview. With a week until Christmas Eve, he needed to get back and finalize Starfall's holiday content strategy. Christmas was the perfect opportunity to take the studio to the next level. Because Landon had booked the flight, Leo was in first class. It was his first time, and he had to be guided to his seat by the flight attendant. Mr. Yeager, can I get you something to drink? The flight attendant asked with a warm smile. Leo paused, then answered instinctively, an Americano, please. Thank you. Of course, Mr. Yeager. Just then, a voice, both familiar and strange, sounded from behind him. Leo Yeager? HM. Leo turned to see a guy in a tailored suit standing in the aisle, his hair shellacked with product and a pair of silver-framed glasses perched on his nose. He was staring at Leo with a look of pure shock. The face was familiar, but Leo couldn't place it for the life of him. He asked tentatively, I'm sorry, are you? TCH. Seriously, Leo? You're going to pretend you don't know me? The guy scoffed. Just because I go to school in New York doesn't mean I look down on you for staying in Crestview. He puffed out his chest, adjusting his collar with an air of immense pride. Since you don't recognize me, allow me to reintroduce myself. I'm Julian Croft, Software Engineering, NYU. Julian Croft? The name clicked, and Leo's jaw dropped. He hadn't recognized Julian because the guy was a completely different person. The clunky black frames were gone, replaced by sophisticated silver ones. The high school buzz cut had been upgraded to a slicked-back, mature style. Leo blinked, then broke into a grin. Oh, right. The clown. The resident brainiac. Long time no see. The last time Leo had seen Julian was at the graduation party, and his final impression was of Julian's utterly cringe-worthy behavior. The word clown had slipped out before he could stop it. Julian, however, seemed to miss the awkwardness in Leo's tone. He tilted his head back smugly. As I was saying, Leo, my major is software engineering. My aptitude is such that I completed the entire 3-year curriculum in my first semester. I've also been learning advanced concepts directly from my professors, things you'd never get in a classroom. On top of that, I've taken on some freelance software development and back-end data analysis for a few apps. And, Leo said, his expression flat. Julian might be an arrogant, socially inept weirdo, but Leo never denied he was brilliant. The guy had been #1 at Northwood High for a reason. Julian let out a triumphant little hum. And I made $15,000 in my first semester of college. Of course, I had to turn down bigger projects. They would have taken up too much of my study time. But my advisor says the digital media landscape is exploding. He suggested I work part-time as a data analyst for a content company. Combined with the custom data analysis apps I can build, the salary would be substantial. By the time I graduate, I'll easily qualify for a position starting well into the 6 figures. Wow, that's amazing. Good for you, Leo said with a dry, humorless chuckle. Julian, completely oblivious to the sarcasm, pushed his glasses up his nose. But I'm not interested in some 6-figure salary. My plan is to work part-time while I'm in school, learning and gaining experience simultaneously. By the time I graduate, I'll be ready to launch my own digital media company, complete with my own proprietary app and platform. These are things a recent graduate like you, with 0 experience, could never even dream of. I still don't understand why Isabel chose to be your deskmate, why she stayed in Crestview with you. I'm the one who truly shares a soul connection with her. Hearing that absolutely unhinged statement, Leo couldn't hold back any longer. He pressed his lips together. Okay, Mr. Soul Connection, you should probably sit down. The plane's about to take off. TCH, don't change the subject. Tell me the truth. After starting college, Isabel must have realized you two have nothing in common. She's already distancing herself from you, isn't she? A smug grin spread across Julian's face. You just wait. I'm heading back to Crestview, not only to find a position at a media company, but also to reconnect with Isabel. Now that she's experienced the real world of college, she'll definitely see that I am the one she has a soul connection with. Leo opened his mouth to reply, but the flight attendant returned with his Americano. She placed it on the small table next to him and said politely, "Gentlemen, we're about to take off. Please take your seats." Leo nodded, abandoning any attempt to argue with Julian. He turned to the flight attendant. "Could you help me connect to the first-class Wi-Fi, please?" "Of course, sir." Leo unlocked his phone and handed it to her. In that brief moment, Julian caught a glimpse of the screen. His eyes shot wide open in disbelief. "Leo! Leo!" he practically shrieked. "Dude, keep it down. Are you trying to upgrade from Mr. Sole connection to Mr. Screech?" Leo grumbled, startled. Julian ignored him, snatching the phone from the flight attendant's hand. When he saw the wallpaper clearly, a photo of Leo with his arm wrapped snugly around Isabel, he staggered back in despair. How? How did you convince her to take such an intimate photo with you?" Leo shot him a look one might reserve for a complete idiot. "She's my girlfriend," he said, rolling his eyes. "Why would I need to convince her to take a picture with me?" "Girlfriend, you and Isabel are dating." "Yes." Leo calmly took his phone back from Julian's trembling hand. Julian froze, staring blankly at Leo. A few seconds later, his vision swam, and he collapsed into a nearby seat, all his earlier bravado gone. He muttered endlessly, "Impossible, impossible. I'm her soulmate. How could she be with Leo Yeager? It's fake. It has to be fake." The memory of his public humiliation at the graduation party came flooding back, the feeling of Leo slapping him down with reality. And now, months later, it was happening all over again. Leo couldn't be bothered with him. He had the flight attendant connect his phone to the Wi-Fi, then settled into his seat to deal with some work for Starfall Studios. 2 hours later, the plane touched down smoothly at Crestview International. Leo grabbed his bag and deplaned. As he neared the exit, he ran into Julian again. He seemed to have recovered from his shock, though his expression was a complicated mix of emotions. "Leo, I should have known. No wonder a regular college student with no income can afford to fly first class. It's because you're with Isabel. She bought you this ticket, didn't she?" "No, a friend of mine did." "Huh. The point is, you didn't buy it yourself. Because you can't afford it." Julian sneered, his confidence seemingly restored. Before Leo could respond, he continued, "Unlike me, I'm already financially independent. In fact, I send money home to my parents every month. I'll let you in on something. I'm back in Crestview to take a position at a digital media studio called Starfall. They're a rising star, making huge waves in the short-form video space. TCH, you wouldn't understand. Let me put it in terms you can grasp. You know those viral TikTok accounts, Starfall Official and Just a Fish? They belong to Starfall Studios. Now do you understand the caliber of the place I'm about to join?" Starfall. Leo's jaw finally dropped, his eyes wide with feigned astonishment. Julian was thrilled by his reaction. He pushed up his glasses, his voice dripping with condescension. "It seems you've heard of it. So, you must realize the gap between us now, don't you? By the way, see that man up ahead holding the Starfall sign? That's my ride. Someone from the studio, sent specifically to pick me up. I won't waste any more time on you. Go on, take a moment to reflect on the chasm between us. I truly don't know what Isabel sees in you." With that, Julian strode confidently toward the man holding the sign, a certain Preston Bailey. He glanced back over his shoulder one last time to smirk at Leo. When he reached the man, Julian extended a polite hand. "Mr. Bailey, I presume? I'm Julian Croft. We spoke on the phone." "Mr. Croft, a pleasure. Please, you're too kind. I had no idea you already knew our boss." Julian frowned. "Your boss? I don't know him." "Oh." Preston Bailey looked confused. He glanced past Julian's shoulder. "Mr. Yeager," he asked hesitantly, "you and Mr. Croft aren't acquainted?" "We are." A sudden realization dawned on Julian. His body trembled, and his neck felt like it was made of stone as he slowly, stiffly turned his head. Leo was standing right behind him, a cheerful smile playing on his lips. In an instant, Julian's legs went weak. A tingling sensation of pure dread washed over him. "Leo, you're the boss of Starfall Studios." "No," Leo replied, his smile widening. "I'm Isabel Thornton's soulmate." Hearing Leo's perfectly timed, ironic retort, Julian's mind went completely blank. He stared, speechless, his face draining of color until it was a ghastly white. His lips trembled, and his entire body seemed to deflate as if his spine had been removed, leaving him barely able to stand. His eyes, wide with disbelief and crushing defeat, were locked on Leo, desperately searching for any sign that this was all a joke. But all he saw was that calm, confident smile. How was that possible? How could you be the boss of Starfall?" Julian mumbled, his voice hoarse and strained. The proud, ramrod-straight posture he'd maintained was gone, replaced by a defeated slump. His self-assured facade had vanished without a trace. Seeing Julian on the verge of a complete breakdown, Leo's lips curved into a teasing smile. "What's the matter? Surprised? Weren't you the one just saying how you could easily land a six-figure job and start your own media empire? What happened? Can't even compete with a so-called inexperienced graduate like me anymore?" Every word was a precision strike, piercing right through Julian's ego. Preston Bailey, standing to the side, quickly sized up the situation. He took a subtle step back, remaining silent. Julian looked up at Leo, his expression a painful mix of humiliation and resentment. He opened his mouth to argue, but found his throat was tight, unable to produce a sound. His mind was a chaotic mess, replaying every arrogant boast he'd made just moments before. Each one was now a boomerang that had come flying back to hit him squarely in the face. Did Leo not deserve Isabel? In his mind, absolutely not. But now he deserved her a hell of a lot more than Julian did. The thought made his face burn. Finally, clinging to the last shred of his pride, he spat out, "You just wait, Leo. Don't think you're invincible just because you started some little studio. Every dog has its day." With that, Julian, his face beet red, turned to flee the scene of his humiliation. He'd barely taken a step when Leo's voice stopped him. "Julian, wait a second." Julian froze and turned back. Before Leo could speak, he snarled, "What, Leo? I was a little arrogant, so now that you have the upper hand, you're going to rub my face in it? You think Isabel won't find out about this pathetic, petty behavior?" Leo's expression remained calm. "First of all, you were prancing around me like a circus clown. Anyone in my position would be tempted to mock you. Second, that's not my intention. I'm not that bored. Don't project your own small-mindedness onto me." "Huh, then what do you want?" Leo stepped aside, revealing Preston Bailey behind him. "Weren't you here to discuss your position at Starfall?" he asked evenly. "Planning on quitting before you even start? Mister, Bailey came all this way to pick you up. You're not even going to give him the courtesy of showing up." Julian's resentful expression morphed into shock. Even Preston looked surprised. Neither of them had expected Leo to look past the insult and still offer Julian the job. Julian stood dumbfounded for a full 10 seconds before he managed to stammer, "Leo, you're still going to let me join Starfall?" "Of course. But, between us," Julian trailed off, too ashamed to finish the sentence. Leo just laughed it off. "It's not a big deal. Just some trash talk. I'm not going to let something so trivial prevent my company from hiring a talent who can bring us significant value. Your emotional intelligence is lacking, but your IQ is more than sufficient. Mr. Bailey, I'll ride with you to the office." "Of course, Mr. Yeager." Preston smiled and gestured for them to proceed. Leo glanced at Julian, then followed Preston toward the waiting company van. Julian remained rooted to the spot, watching Leo's back. After a long moment of hesitation, he finally broke into a jog and followed them. Once in the car, Julian eyed Leo suspiciously. "You're just trying to lure me to the studio so you can humiliate me in front of everyone, aren't you? TCH, if you really think that, why did you get in the car?" Julian snorted, holding up his phone. "If you try anything, I'll record the whole thing and send it to Isabel. Then she'll see you for who you really are and leave you." "Oh, Mr. Bailey," Leo said drily. "When we get there, have a couple of people confiscate this guy's phone and pat him down just in case. No electronics allowed in the office." Julian's face paled. You're despicable. Are you for real, or are you just playing dumb? Relax. I'm not that petty. Like I said, I just don't want to miss out on a talent who can benefit Starfall." "Really?" Seeing that Leo was, in fact, joking, Julian's expression shifted again, his eyes filled with doubt. After a long pause, he seemed to relax slightly, but he still couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you afraid that once I'm inside, I'll learn all your operational procedures, memorize your workflow, and then leave to start my own studio and crush you?" "Terrified," Leo said with a theatrical yawn. "So please, Great One, have mercy on poor little Starfall." Leo's complete and utter dismissal of him as a threat felt like punching a pillow. Julian finally deflated, giving up the fight. From the front passenger seat, Leo caught a glimpse of Julian's slumped figure in the rearview mirror and couldn't help but smile. It wasn't that he was particularly forgiving. It was that a guy like Julian wore every thought on his face. He had no subtlety. For Leo's current plans, a transparent, predictable pawn like Julian was exactly what he needed. As they neared the office, Julian, who had been silent for the rest of the ride, spoke up again. "Leo, I've noticed you're very imprecise." "What do you mean?" The current scale of Starfall makes it a studio, at best. Yet you keep calling it a company. Starfall has already reached the scale of a company, Leo replied calmly. The trademarks and incorporation papers are being finalized, and the internal departments are almost fully structured. Julian fell silent again. He shot a complex look at Leo, a flicker of doubt finally shaking his core. Maybe the gap between him and Leo really was that vast now. Fine, he huffed, trying to save face. You're lucky to have hired a technical genius like me. Leo just smiled without saying a word. The guy had zero cunning, but his pride was off the charts. What a special kind of weirdo, Leo thought. Almost endearing. In a private hospital room in New York City, Landon Archer stood by Sharon Thornton's bed. Sharon, he said. Leo Yeager was in the city yesterday. Oh, I assume he was here for Isabel. But her father has her under house arrest. They couldn't have met, could they? Landon shook his head, his face unreadable. No, he came to me to discuss some matters concerning his studio. I used the opportunity to place some of my own people inside. Landon, I didn't expect you to move so quickly. But it's for the best, Sharon said with a satisfied smile. Isabel can't leave the house, and she can't contact Leo. If you make a move now, he'll be caught off guard, and she won't be able to help him. It's the perfect opportunity. Landon gave a slight nod, then changed the subject. How have you been feeling? Quite well. The baby is due in a little over a week. While I'm focused on that, I'll have to trouble you to keep a close eye on our company's joint venture. Don't be so formal, Sharon. We're family, after all. You're right. We are. Sharon covered her mouth, her mood visibly bright. After discussing a few more business details, she called for her driver, Jonathan, to escort Landon out. A moment later, Jonathan returned to the room. Ma'am, Mr. Archer has left. Good. Starting tomorrow, tell Simon Leong and Chris Zhang to begin. Richard is already swamped with year-end reports and running back and forth to see me. That alone would be enough to drive him mad. Now that his precious daughter has given him another headache, he'll be even more vulnerable to a surprise. A cold smile remained on Sharon's face. Jonathan nodded. Understood, ma'am. Please take care of yourself. Jonathan, when this is done, you will be well rewarded. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You're the one person I trust completely. Thank you for your trust, ma'am. Jonathan gave a firm nod and left the room. He didn't know why, but whenever Sharon gave him an order, he felt an innate sense of obedience. He knew that much of what he was doing was wrong, a betrayal of his conscience. But because it was for her, he felt no resistance at all. Back in Crestview, Leo fell into a routine, shuttling between the office and his apartment. Richard Thornton still had Isabel's phone, so Leo had no way of contacting her. The days suddenly felt quiet and empty. In that time, Landon made good on his promise. Before Christmas, he applied pressure on Sean Xiao, using the method they had discussed. And Sean's reaction was exactly as Landon had predicted. To avoid bloating the studio's budget further, he proactively approached Leo, asking him to recontact the editors they had previously scouted. As a show of good faith, Sean even offered to add a 2% cut of video revenue to their original salary offers. With Sean's approval, Leo easily convinced the experienced editors Mark Zhang had found to jump ship. However, because they were being hired at a premium, 2 to 3 times the salary of the existing editors and writers, Leo had them all sign NDAs regarding their compensation. And so, Leo's days were consumed by Starfall. He and Sean worked together, planning their content releases for the Christmas holiday. Students, office workers, everyone would have downtime. The user base would be larger than ever. It was the prime time to create a viral hit, which meant tapping into the psychology of the masses. They needed content that would resonate with everyone. With that direction set, the writers began drafting scripts, and the new team rushed to shoot and edit them. Time flew by. Soon it was Christmas Eve. It had been 8 days since Leo returned from New York. 8 days since he'd last spoken to his little neighbor. A hollow feeling he couldn't quite name had settled in his chest. On the afternoon of Christmas Eve, the office was empty except for him. After finishing the last of his work, he let out a long sigh and looked around at the potted plants Isabel had brought for him. He couldn't help but remember her inner voice from that day. I just want to marry you sooner. A smile touched his lips, but it only deepened the ache of missing her. Busy. His phone vibrated on the desk. Leo snapped back to reality, his eyes darting to the screen, his heart pounding. He prayed it was Isabel, that she had found a way to call him. But when the name Kevin Xiong flashed on the screen, his excitement vanished, doused by a bucket of ice water. He answered dejectedly, Hey, Kevin, what's up? Leo, you should come with us to my grandparents' place. I can't. Still busy with work. I can't get away. Dude, you can lie to me, but don't lie to yourself. It's Christmas Eve. You should be done by now. Seriously, I'm swamped. You guys go have fun with your family. Before Kevin could argue, Leo hung up. Every year, Kevin's family went to their relative's house in the country for Christmas. Leo didn't want to impose. It was their family gathering. He was an outsider. It wouldn't feel right. He had also lied to Isabel, telling her back in New York that he would be spending Christmas Eve with Kevin's family. After hanging up, Leo left the office and drove back toward the Maplewood. For years, he'd gotten used to spending Christmas Eve alone. The moment Leo stepped out of the heated office building, the cold air hit him like a wall. Snowflakes had begun to drift down from the gray sky. For Christmas Eve, the streetlights and trees were draped in festive red and green decorations. The roads were nearly empty, and most of the shops were closed for the holiday. A few lonely red lanterns swayed in the wind, their faint, warm glow a small attempt to color the festive atmosphere. It was the time of evening when families were gathering for dinner, leaving the streets deserted. As Leo got into his car, he glanced across the street at a cozy Italian restaurant. Through the fog-up window, he could see a large family, grandparents, parents, and children, gathered around a table, their laughter and joy almost palpable, seeming to pass right through the glass and into his car. In the midst of all the holiday cheer, Leo felt like an outsider, completely disconnected from it all. Tap, tap. A knock on his window startled him. He turned to see Julian Croft standing beside his car. Leo, I knew it was you. Julian rubbed his hands together against the cold, then jogged around to the passenger side, opened the door without asking, and plopped into the seat. He held his hands up to the heater vent. I had a feeling you'd still be at the office. But seriously, aren't you going home for Christmas Eve dinner? Leo blinked. I was just about to head back. What are you doing here? I have to visit relatives tomorrow, so to make sure I don't fall behind on work, I'm bringing my computer home. I just came to grab it. My family's waiting for me. Oh, well, you're in luck. The office is empty and locked up. Here, take my key. Leo pulled the key from his pocket and handed it to Julian. Julian took it and hopped out of the car without another word. Leo released the parking brake, ready to leave. But Julian came back, looking a little embarrassed. Ahem. Hey, Leo, can you wait for me? My place is pretty far from the office, and there are no cabs out tonight. If it's on your way, could you give me a lift? Where do you live? The Summit Estates. Oh, I live at the Maplewood. That's on the way, Leo lied. Go get your computer. I'll wait here. Hearing that, Julian scurried upstairs. In reality, their apartments were in completely opposite directions. But Leo had nothing better to do. Going home just meant collapsing on the couch and watching some boring Christmas special by himself. Julian was a high-strung weirdo who said all the wrong things, but having someone to talk to was infinitely better than being alone in a cold, empty apartment. A few minutes later, Julian returned, clutching his laptop. As he settled back into the passenger seat, Leo started driving toward the Summit Estates. I'm surprised you're willing to work over the holiday, Leo commented idly. Your position doesn't require overtime. So what? The job doesn't require it, but the data doesn't stop running. Especially over Christmas, the metrics from one hour to the next can be completely different. To stay on top of the latest trending topics and memes, you have to monitor the back end constantly. If I miss something because I'm on vacation, the company might be a step behind on a new script. That would slow down our growth, wouldn't it? Shouldn't that make you happy? I thought you wanted to see Starfall fail and watch me get humiliated. Julian instinctively sat up straighter and pushed his glasses up. You're right, he said with dead seriousness. I would derive great pleasure from watching Starfall fail and you fall into ruin. However, based on my analysis, Starfall is highly unlikely to fail. It's merely a question of succeeding sooner versus succeeding later. Therefore, my strategy is to utilize my full capabilities to help Starfall succeed as quickly as possible. Then, after its success, I will devise a plan to seize the fruits of that victory for myself. Leo was speechless. After a moment, he managed a dazed reply. So you're just telling me your entire plan? Aren't you worried I'll be on guard? What does it matter? A true master of his craft needs no subterfuge. I'm telling you because I refuse to be petty or dishonest. A gentleman plays with his cards on the table. How else could I be worthy of Isabel Thornton? Leo could only marvel at the sheer audacity. This guy's on another level. Spoken like a true New Yorker, he said. Your ideals are truly something else. Of course, Julian said, puffing up with pride. Heh, Leo laughed to himself. The guy's IQ was off the charts, but everything else about him was painfully immature. He was so transparent. If a con artist ever met him, they'd probably feel too guilty to even try scamming him. As they approached the Summit Estates, Julian suddenly asked, Leo, now that you're so successful, Do your parents still give you money for Christmas? The question hung in the air. Leo fell silent for a moment before answering in a low voice. My parents passed away when I was very young. I don't get Christmas presents. Oh, even the normally oblivious Julian was stunned. It took him a few seconds to recover. I'm sorry, I didn't know. So, you go to a relative's house for dinner then? I don't have any relatives, Leo said flatly. I'm not having Christmas dinner. The flicker of loneliness in his eyes did not go unnoticed this time. Julian stared at him, his expression growing complex. Then, Isabel is spending Christmas with you, right? She's in New York. Julian froze. Something clicked in his mind. He quickly pulled out his phone and looked up the location of the Maplewood. Just as he suspected, it wasn't on the way to his place at all. It was in the opposite direction. A pang of something unfamiliar hit him. He finally understood why Leo had lied. His expression grew heavy. After a long moment, he said quietly, Leo, why don't you come home with me? Have Christmas Eve dinner at my place. The car had already stopped at the gate of the Summit Estates. Leo smiled at Julian and pushed the passenger door open for him. No, it's okay. You should go. Say hi to your parents for me. Julian opened his mouth, then closed it. Seeing the practiced resignation on Leo's face, he just sighed and got out of the car. After Julian was gone, Leo started to turn the car around when his phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out, and his heart leaped. An unfamiliar number with a New York area code was calling. A wave of excitement washed over him. It had to be her. With a trembling hand, Leo answered the call. Hello, Leo. What the hell, man? It was Rex Gao. Leo's heart sank like a stone. He forced the disappointment down, trying to sound normal. Rex? Why are you calling from a New York number? I thought you had a West Virginia one. Ah, my old man had a deal to close out here, so he figured we might as well spend Christmas in the city. The whole family's here. I figured since Isabel is from New York, you might be here with her. Thought maybe after you two finish dinner, we could go set off some fireworks. Rex's boisterous voice, thick with a slight slur, crackled through the phone. In the background, Leo could hear loud chatter and laughter. Leo paused. I'm not in New York. I'm in Crestview, just heading home. Damn, that's too bad. But hey, nothing wrong with being home for the holidays. Sitting around with family, eating a hot meal, that's the life. Still, I'm surprised you're not with Isabel. You two are usually glued at the hip at school. She's at her family's place, Leo said after a beat. Her dad has her on house arrest for a while. We can't really contact each other. What? That sucks. Don't worry, man. You'll see her after the holidays. Or hell, just fly out here and see her. It's not like it's hard to get a flight. Yeah, we'll see, Leo murmured, not wanting to get into it. He desperately wanted to be with her, but he knew if he showed up in New York, she would move heaven and earth to see him, which would only lead to another huge fight with her father. He couldn't put her through that. After a few more minutes of small talk, Rex said, You know, Leo, we've been on the phone for almost 10 minutes, and you haven't tried to flex on me once. It's kind of weird. Oh, speaking of which, my company's monthly revenue is now. Holy crap on a cracker. I'm hanging up, Rex shouted, and the line went dead. Leo chuckled, holding the phone. TCH, can't take it when I actually do it. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. The loneliness returned, heavier than before, as he watched the snow fall. He started the car and drove toward the Maplewood. All along the way, fireworks bloomed in the night sky, their brilliant colors a stark contrast to the darkness in his heart. All he could see was her face. Finally, he was back at the Maplewood. He dragged himself into the building, only to find that the elevator was out of order. He sighed and started the long climb up the stairs. The hallways were filled with the rich aromas of holiday feasts and the muffled sounds of laughter and Christmas specials on TV. He practically ran up the last flight to the 10th floor and stopped in front of apartment 1003. He knew she was in New York, but a foolish sliver of hope made him knock. For a long moment, the only response was the click of the motion-activated hallway light. Leo gave a bitter smile and turned to unlock his own door. The apartment was pitch black, cold, and empty. He didn't bother turning on the lights or even taking off his shoes. He just dove onto the sofa, the weight of his solitude crashing down on him. He turned on the TV. Some cheerful Christmas program was on, but he couldn't muster any interest. He picked up his phone and scrolled through his old texts with Isabel, each loving message now a tiny dagger in his heart. He wished so desperately that she would just appear. Wait a second. An idea struck him. He shot up from the sofa and went back to 1003. He used his key, let himself in, and sat on her sofa. She wasn't there, but her scent lingered in the air, a faint, comforting presence. For a moment, it helped. But 5 minutes later, the ache of missing her was even worse. He couldn't stand being inside anymore. He went back downstairs, got in his car, and drove to a roadside stand where he bought a massive box of fireworks. At 9 o'clock, he was in the middle of the complex's common lawn, setting them off. He was soon joined by a few elementary school kids, all hyped up on holiday excitement and bored with watching TV with the adults. "Wow, mister," one of them said, his eyes wide with awe. "Your mom and dad are so cool. They bought you so many fireworks." Leo paused for a beat, then smiled faintly. "I bought them myself." "Whoa, that's even cooler. You must be rich to buy all these yourself. I can't wait to grow up." The kids ran off to light some sparklers, and Leo felt a strange sense of detachment. Kids were kids. To them, growing up just meant having money. "I guess I used to think that way too," he mused, always wishing someone would just show up and give me a giant box of fireworks. He turned, went back to his car, and pulled out the rest of the fireworks he'd planned to save. He carried them over to the kids. "Thank you, mister," they cried in surprise. "But why are you giving them all to us?" "You're welcome," Leo said with a small, sad smile. "It's a gift for the kid I used to be." The kids looked at each other, confused, then shrugged and happily started setting off their new bounty. Watching them, Leo's smile inexplicably faded. The noise, the shouting, it was too much. He suddenly didn't feel like smiling anymore. He gave him the last of his stash, and they scampered off to a larger open area. Leo watched them go, then turned and let himself fall backward onto the snow-covered lawn. He lay there, staring up at the endlessly falling snow, his gaze unfocused. The sound of the kids' laughter and the pop of fireworks faded into a dull roar, as if he were underwater. The sky was a kaleidoscope of brilliant colors, but none of it could penetrate the gloom in his heart. Just then, his phone buzzed again in his pocket. But after so many false alarms, he was done hoping. He knew it wouldn't be her. He didn't even bother pulling it out. He just closed his eyes, letting the snowflakes melt on his face. He didn't know how much time had passed when he smelled a familiar, sweet scent. He felt a gentle poke on his cheek. His eyes flew open. Looking down at him was the face he had been dreaming of. Isabel was leaning over him, her hands on her knees, her expression soft and tender. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, but her eyes were dancing with a smile that seemed to hold all the stars in the sky. She lifted one hand and poked his cheek again. "So," she said, her voice a gentle tease, "you'd rather lie here all alone in the snow than answer my phone call?" Leo stared up at Isabel, a lump forming in his throat. For a second, he was lost in a daze. Dressed in a stylish trench coat with a white scarf tucked around her chin, she looked so beautiful she could have stepped out of painting. He was convinced he must have fallen asleep in the snow and conjured her from the sheer force of his longing. He sat up abruptly, reaching out to touch her cheek. But with the scarf in the way, he hesitated. Isabel saw his intention and smiled, a little dimple appearing at the corner of her mouth. She pulled the scarf down just enough and leaned her face into his outstretched hand. The moment his fingers met her skin, warm, soft, and undeniably real, he knew. This wasn't a dream. It was all real. Isabel was here. She had come back from New York. He'd imagined she might find a way to text or call him on Christmas Eve. But he never, ever thought they would be able to cross that physical distance to be this close. And he knew, without a doubt, that she had come for him. To be with him on the night he felt most alone. The shock finally gave way to coherent thought. He fumbled for his phone, and sure enough, there was a missed call from a few minutes ago. The contact name, simply my little neighbor. I didn't think you'd be able to call," he stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "So I wasn't checking my phone. But how are you here? Did her dad lift the house arrest?" Isabel just looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of amusement and tenderness. Instead of answering, she reached out and gently brushed the snowflakes from his face. Then she glanced toward the kids, still setting off fireworks across the lawn. "Leo," she said, her voice full of playful longing, "I want to set off fireworks too." Leo blinked, looked at the kids who now possessed his entire arsenal, and then nodded firmly. "Okay, then give me your hand and pull me up." It was as if all of her usual cool composure had melted away, replaced by an open, unguarded affection. She helped him to his feet, carefully dusting the snow off his clothes. Leo took her hand, and they walked over to the kids. "Hey guys," Leo said, "can I have a few of those fireworks back?" "Sure," one of the boys said. "There's only a few left, though." He pushed the box toward them. Leo lit a punk with his lighter and handed it to Isabel. "Be careful. After you light it, don't run too fast. It's icy. Then you have to be behind me to catch me if I fall," she said with a grin, then took the punk and skipped over to a firework they'd set up. Leo stood behind her and the kids, a quiet warmth spreading through his chest, chasing away the last of the evening's chill. The loneliness was gone. Isabel was like a warm current, arriving just before the winter storm could truly set in. When the last firework had fizzled out, the kids waved goodbye and ran home. Isabel walked over to a nearby gazebo, brushing the snow off a stone bench before sitting down. Leo sat beside her. As the wind howled outside the small shelter, Isabel snuggled close, wrapping her arms around his and resting her head on his shoulder. The dreamlike feeling finally faded, replaced by the solid, comforting reality of her presence. He turned his head slightly. "So, did you really sneak out of New York to come here?" "MHM. But it's Christmas Eve. You should be with your family. If your dad finds out, he's going to be furious." She just shook her head and held his arm tighter, her voice small and a little wounded. "But we haven't seen each other or even spoken in 202 hours. I missed you." Leo's heart melted. He stopped asking questions and just held her close. After a while, the temperature began to drop. "We should go upstairs," he said. "It's getting late, and you'll catch a cold out here." Isabel nodded softly, but made no move to get up. Leo looked at her quizzically. She squinted her eyes in a playful, pleading expression. "Leo, my legs are tired. Can you carry me back?" His eyes widened in surprise. He couldn't remember a single time she had ever asked him for something like this, something so openly needy. It was as if her return had stripped away her layers of cool reserve, allowing her to be completely, naturally affectionate. The surprise quickly turned to pure joy. He happily turned and presented his back to her. "Of course. Hop on." "Okay," she chirped. She stood on the bench, wrapped her arms around his neck, and settled onto his back. Leo hooked his hands under her legs, stood up, and began the steady walk back to their building. Each step made a soft crunch in the snow. He walked slowly, carefully, not wanting to jostle her. Isabel rested her cheek against the side of his neck, her warm breath tickling his skin. Leo walked slowly. "Don't fall." He grinned. "Don't worry. I've got you." Outside, the snowstorm was picking up, but inside, Leo was filled with a profound warmth. The soft yellow glow of the streetlights stretched their shadows long across the snow. Snowflakes fell on his shoulders and dusted her hair. Isabel watched their merged shadow on the ground and smiled. She reached up and poked his cheek. "Leo, look. Our shadow looks like a pair of snowmen." "Then I'm the big snowman, carrying my little snowman." "Wrong," she whispered, her voice a happy murmur against his ear. "Carrying your little snowman." It was 10:30 at night. When Leo and Isabel got back to the building, the elevator had been repaired. They rode it up to the 10th floor. As the door slid open, they were hit by a wave of delicious smells, sweet and sour pork, braised pork belly, and the savory aroma of garlic and ginger from dumpling filling, all wafting from the neighboring apartments. Leo, who hadn't eaten all evening, felt his stomach rumble loudly. He rubbed his nose in embarrassment. "Ahem, I got busy at the office and never got around to eating. I even sat on your couch for a bit when I got back, but I got bored and went to buy fireworks instead." "MHM. I haven't eaten either," Isabel said. "So let's have Christmas Eve dinner together." She walked to the door of 1003 and unlocked it. The moment it opened, a black and white blur shot out and launched itself into Leo's arms. Before he could react, something wet and warm licked his face. He looked down to see buttercream, tail wagging furiously, tongue lolling out in pure, unadulterated joy. Looking up, Leo was even more surprised to see Lester, wearing an apron, emerging from the kitchen with 2 platters of food. Lester heard the noise at the door and smiled when he saw Leo. "Mr. Yeager, Miss Isabel, you're back. Perfect timing. Come in, wash your hands, dinner is ready." "This?" Leo looked from Lester to Isabel, completely a loss for words. Isabel giggled at his dumbfounded expression. She pulled him inside and explained, "Before Lester and I got on the plane, I called the staff at the estate here and had them prepare dinner. We came straight to the Maplewood from the airport, and the food arrived right on time. But you weren't home, and you weren't answering your phone, so I went downstairs to find you." Lester just reheated some of the dishes that got a little cold. She paused, then pouted with mock severity. "I knew you were lying when you said you were spending Christmas Eve with that knucklehead." Leo was so moved he could feel his eyes getting misty. He quickly changed the subject to hide his emotion. "By the way, how did you know I'd be on the lawn?" "I saw you from the balcony. You can see the whole common area from my window. I watched you and those little kids with the fireworks for a while. You were kind of cute." Little Leo. Leo's face flushed. He coughed awkwardly and bent down to pet Buttercream, who purred with pleasure. Just then, Lester took off his apron. Mr. Yeager, the food is all hot. I won't disturb you any longer." "Lester, stay and eat with us," Leo insisted. "Your family isn't in Crestview, and you didn't take the holiday off. You can't spend Christmas Eve alone." Miss, Isabel cut him off, putting on a stern face. No arguments, Lester. Go wash your hands and eat, or I'll have to dock your pay. Lester took a deep breath and nodded firmly. Yes, miss. After washing up, Lester returned to the living room and, for the first time, took the initiative to turn on the TV, flipping it to a Christmas special. The three of them sat around the dining table, which was laden with a magnificent feast. The sweet and sour pork glistened, and the braised pork was tender and rich. The dumplings were plump and burst with savory broth when bitten into. Damn, your family chef is no joke, Leo said, impressed. Isabel just hummed in agreement, eating small, delicate bites, her face glowing with happiness. Neither of them treated Lester like an employee. He was family. They ate and chatted, occasionally commenting on the plot of the Christmas movie. The TV became a cheerful backdrop to their own little celebration. Outside, fireworks popped and whistled, each explosion adding to the festive atmosphere. As midnight approached, the sound of firecrackers intensified. Leo looked at Isabel and Lester beside him, a profound sense of security washing over him. Maybe he thought this is what a home feels like. Whoosh boom! FWE! Pop pop pop! At the stroke of midnight, the three of them stood outside on the lawn. They watched as fireworks painted the night sky in brilliant bursts of color. Leo used a lighter to ignite a string of firecrackers, then quickly ran back to Isabel's side, covering her ears with his hands. The air filled with the sharp, crackling pops and the smell of gunpowder, the smell of a real celebration. When the last firecracker had gone silent, Lester seemed to make a decision. He pulled 2 red envelopes from his coat pocket and handed one to each of them, his voice a little shy. Miss Isabel, Mr. Yeager, Happy New Year. This is for you. I know these are usually from elders to the younger generation, but I wanted to give them to you anyway. I truly hope you two will always be happy together. Leo and Isabel exchanged a surprised glance, but neither of them refused. They both wished him a Happy New Year and gratefully accepted the envelopes. Seeing them take the gifts, Lester let out a relieved sigh. After Lester had gone back inside, Isabel said, Leo, come a little closer. Closer for what? He asked, already stepping toward her. She held up her phone, her eyes curving into happy crescents. For a picture, of course. A picture of W.H. Before he could finish, Isabel was on her tiptoes, pressing a soft kiss to his cheek. Mwah. Click. Happy New Year, Leo. Leo was completely unprepared for the kiss. It sent a hot blush creeping up his neck. When he was flustered, his eyes always darted around, and now they fell on Isabel's radiant, smiling face, then on the brilliant fireworks exploding in the night sky, and finally on the image frozen on her phone. In the photo, their figures were illuminated by the colorful bursts of light. Isabel was on her toes, her eyes curved in a joyful smile as she kissed his cheek. It was so perfect, it looked like a promotional still from a romantic movie. Isabel adored the picture, a satisfied smile playing on her lips as she studied it. Leo was about to ask her to send it to him so he could make it his new wallpaper, but before he could, she posted it to her Instagram story with a simple 2-word caption, us. Then, she sent the photo to him. She looked up, her eyes sparkling. Leo, you posted too? Huh. He was genuinely shocked. For people their age, posting couple photos on social media was completely normal, especially on holidays. But even though they had taken plenty of pictures together, it had never been their habit to share them publicly. This was the first time. He blinked. Why the sudden urge to post a picture of us? Isabel pouted. What? You don't want people to know you have a gorgeous girlfriend like me? Exclamation point. Leo was momentarily speechless, then burst out laughing. Of course not. I was just surprised. You're usually so reserved around other people. I didn't think you'd want our pictures all over social media. Without another word, he posted the photo to his own Instagram with the caption, every day, every year. He put his phone back in his pocket without checking it. He knew that after years of social media silence, a picture like that would blow up his notifications. But it was just after midnight. Most people were busy celebrating. The likes and comments could wait. They stood outside for a few more minutes, soaking in the New Year's atmosphere. Snowflakes drifted down, settling on Isabel's shoulders like a delicate, white veil. After a moment, she shivered and tucked her chin deeper into her coat. Leo immediately took off his own jacket and draped it over her shoulders, pulling her into an embrace. Let's go up. She agreed, and they turned back toward the building. On the way, Leo couldn't help but ask again about her trip. Your dad is really not going to be even angrier that you're not in New York for the holiday? Your relationship is already strained, if this makes it. His voice was laced with worry. He still didn't know the full story of how she'd managed to get away. This was the third time he'd asked. The first was when they just reunited. The second was in the gazebo. Both times, she had avoided a direct answer. This time, she bit her lip. After a long pause, she looked down. Dad's company has been having problems with a lot of projects lately, and Sharon's due in a few days. He's been splitting his time between the office and being with her. He doesn't have the energy to deal with me right now. Plus, for the holiday, most of the staff at the mansion went home. I had Landon and Lester help distract the few that were left, and then Lester and I came back to Crestview. So, your dad doesn't actually know you're here? She nodded quietly. He doesn't. But even if he found out, he doesn't have time to deal with me the way he did before. He has more than enough on his plate in New York. Hearing this, Leo's heart swelled with an even deeper wave of emotion, tinged with guilt. She had known all along that he was lying about spending Christmas Eve with Kevin's family. So she had risked her father's wrath, sneaking all the way back from New York just to be with him. Back in 1003, Isabel took off her coat and announced she was going to take a shower. Leo sat on the couch, playing with Buttercream and Oscar. After a few minutes, his phone, which he'd left on the coffee table, buzzed. It was a text from Kevin. Leo, Happy New Year. Happy New Year, he typed back. Whoa, you're still up. Figured you'd be home alone and probably asleep by now. I was gonna drive back tonight, but the snow's too bad. Sorry I can't be there with you, man. Ahem, it's fine. Isabel came back from New York. No way. That's awesome. Having the campus queen with you is a million times better than having me. You two have fun. I'm gonna go video call Clara. LOL. Leo closed the chat and saw dozens of notifications on his Instagram icon. His post had clearly been seen. He opened it and scrolled through the comments. Haley Xia, OMG. I'm dead. So sweet. Felix Foam, I'm jealous. Mark Zhang, Leo, Happy New Year. Wishing you and Isabel all the best. Julian Croft, Leo Yeager, I will have my revenge. Ruby Yu, hey freshman, let that girl go and come to me. Rex Gao, WTF? Leo, you son of a bitch. You said you weren't coming to New York. How did you teleport here to meet up with Isabel? Leo went through the comments, thanking everyone who had wished them well. After replying to the positive messages, he singled out Julian and Rex. To Julian, he wrote, Happy New Year, Soul Connection. Is your new name going to be Revenge Connection? Then, he replied to Rex, someone's jealous. Rex, who was clearly glued to his phone, replied instantly, Screw you. I have no desire for your sappy romance. Where in New York are you guys? I'll come find you. My brother let me borrow his McLaren. I'll give you a ride in a real supercar. Nah, it's late. No way. I finally have a chance to flex on you. You're not getting away. I know where you are. You're probably at the waterfront, right? Wait for me. I'll be there in 20 minutes. TCH. If you come to the waterfront, one of us is definitely getting flexed on, and it won't be me. Shut up, I'm on my way. Leo was about to clarify that they weren't actually in New York, but seeing Rex so fired up, he just couldn't bring himself to crush his spirit. He deleted the message he was typing and sent a new one. All right, come and get it. I'll be waiting. But if you dare show your face at the waterfront tonight, you're going down. Leo, do you want to shower? Isabel asked, emerging from the bathroom while towel drying her wet hair. Her face was flushed and rosy from steam, making her look absolutely adorable. Leo looked up and was momentarily stunned by her natural beauty. He swallowed hard. I showered last night, I'm good. He set his phone aside, stood up, and took the towel from her. Let me. Okay, she said with a soft smile, turning around so he could gently dry her hair. She tried to keep her lips in a straight line, but a happy smile kept breaking through. Once her hair was mostly dry, Leo got the hairdryer from the cabinet. Isabel sat on the sofa while he stood behind her, carefully blowing her hair dry. It was his first time doing this for a girl, and his movements were clumsy at first. But after a few minutes, he got the hang of it. Isabel, meanwhile, was happily scrolling through her own phone. From his vantage point, Leo could easily see her screen. Her post had the same photo, but far fewer likes and comments, and he recognized every name. Her three roommates, Landon and Lester. Landon Archer, Happy New Year, Isabel. Wishing you and Leo all the best. Lester, Miss, you and Mr. Yeager look so perfect together. I've saved this photo. Smiling emoji. Haley Xia, Lester, sir, you are too old to be consuming this much high-fructose corn syrup at night. You'll get diabetes. Isabel giggled at the comments, carefully typing out a reply to each one. By the time Leo finished drying her hair, she was done. She tilted her head back to look up at him, her eyes shining. Leo, we should post pictures more often. No problem. Next. HNNNGH. Leo was agreeing as he put the hairdryer away, but when he looked down, he was met with a sight that made the blood rush to his head. Because she was wearing a loose-fitting pajama top, and he was standing behind her. Her backward tilt had caused the collar to gape open. Leo's face turned beet red. Ahem! He coughed, averting his eyes as his heart hammered against his ribs. He fumbled with the hairdryer, clumsily shoving it back into the cabinet. Isabel sensed his sudden awkwardness and looked down, immediately understanding. A blush spread across her own cheeks, and she quickly pulled her collar closed, shooting him a playfully annoyed look. Oomph. It's not like you haven't touched them before. Hearing her inner voice, Leo's face got even redder. Later that night, Leo naturally stayed over in 1003. He knew that even if he went to his own apartment, she would just find an excuse to lure him back. Before they fell asleep, he casually turned off his phone. Isabel snuggled into his arms. Leo, she whispered, I'll cook for you tomorrow. You know how to cook now? Or is it going to be like last time, with Martha as your assistant while you stand there and give directions? He teased, remembering their visit to the Thornton estate. She shook her head, nudging him reproachfully. No, this time it's all me. No help. What? You really learned to cook? He looked down at her serious expression, genuinely surprised. She nodded, a little proud. I had nothing to do in New York. No phone, couldn't go out. So I had the chef teach me. She traced little circles on his chest with her finger. Tomorrow, you will taste the fruits of my labor. So what can you make? He asked. At this, Isabel's confident expression faltered. She fell silent. After a long moment, she mumbled, her voice barely a whisper, mac and cheese, spaghetti and meatballs, grilled cheese with tomato soup. Leo fought to hold back a laugh. He didn't want to hurt her feelings. But she saw it in his eyes. She pouted, her confidence deflating. Leo, am I really that hopeless? No, not at all, he quickly reassured her. I wasn't laughing because you're hopeless. I was laughing because it's cute. You learned all the classic comfort foods. So you'll eat it? Of course, as long as you're the one making it. Meanwhile, in New York City, the wind howled along the waterfront. Rex Gow cruised back and forth in his flashy McLaren, his eyes peeled for any sign of Leo and Isabel. Damn, it's freezing, he muttered, pulling over. He'd been driving around for over half an hour and hadn't seen them. Worse, Leo wasn't answering his phone. Shivering, Rex pulled out his phone and tried calling again. A second later, a recorded message made his blood run cold. The number you have dialed has been turned off. Please try again later. Rex stared at his phone, dumbfounded. Then he remembered Leo's last text. If you dare show your face at the waterfront tonight, you're going down. A cold dread washed over him, a feeling of pure, unadulterated humiliation. That bastard, he roared into the empty, freezing night. He flexed on me again. The next morning, Christmas Day, the quiet of Crestview, a city blanketed by a night of heavy snowfall, was broken by the distant chime of church bells and the rumble of early morning snowplows. It was just before 9 when the sounds finally stirred Leo Yeager and Isabel Thornton from their sleep. Leo stared at the ceiling for a moment, disoriented, before realizing he wasn't in his own bed. He was with Isabel. He turned his head. The girl nestled in his arms blinked her long lashes, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. When they focused on Leo watching her, a faint blush colored her cheeks. Morning, she murmured, her voice soft and husky. Still tired? It's not even 9. Want to sleep a little more? Isabel shook her head lightly, then poked a finger out from under the covers. The plows are so loud, she complained softly. I can't sleep anymore. After a pause, she added with a hint of her old cool demeanor. Besides, I have to make you lunch today. If I sleep in, I won't have time. We could lie here a little longer, Leo suggested. Okay, she whispered, but I need to use the bathroom first. She slipped out from under the covers and padded toward the inn suite. The moment she was gone, Leo grabbed his phone, which he'd accidentally turned off before they went to sleep. As it powered on, a flood of Christmas messages from friends filled the screen. The most prominent was a storm of over 99 notifications from Rex Gow. Leo swallowed hard, staring at the number. Stealing himself, he tapped open the chat. 12:43 a.m. Yo, Leo, I'm almost at Times Square. Where exactly are you and Isabel? 12:57 a.m. Dude, I'm in a dark blue Audi. Keep an eye out. 1:10 a.m. Holy shit. Are you two just making out in some corner? Pick up your damn phone. 1:28 a.m. Seriously, dude, why is your phone off? Did the battery die? 1:39 a.m. Yeager, you son of a bitch, I swear to God. Your phone better actually be dead. When I find you, I'm gonna hashtag $%. And 2:22 a.m. Bro, please tell me you're actually in New York with Isabel, and she didn't fly back to Crestview to see you. Please don't let my world be this cruel. Leo's jaw twitched as he scrolled through Rex's spiral into madness. Thank God he'd had the foresight to turn off his phone. If Rex had actually gotten through, he couldn't even imagine the string of curses that would have followed. Leo typed a simple, placid reply, "Merry Christmas." Then, for his own sanity, he temporarily blocked him. Knowing Rex, the moment he saw the reply, he'd launch another verbal assault. Better put him on ice for a while, let him cool off. "Leo, who are you putting on ice?" Isabel had returned from the bathroom, catching his quiet mutter. Unaware of the context, she narrowed her eyes, a flicker of hurt in them. Her expression was one step away from saying, "If you're talking about me, I'm going to cry right here and now." Leo froze, then quickly clarified. "Oh, not you. Definitely not you. I was talking about Rex." "Oh." Isabel nodded, her suspicion vanishing instantly. She dove back into the bed with a soft whoosh, pulling the covers all the way over her head. A moment later, just her eyes peeked out. The sight of her, so enchanting and playful, stirred something in him. "I need to use the bathroom too," he announced. In the bathroom, after relieving the pressure that had built up overnight, Leo quietly started brushing his teeth. He had every intention of returning to bed to engage in a little more lip service. It was a classic move for new couples, waking up next to each other, wanting to kiss but being paranoid about morning breath. The bathroom trip was the perfect excuse to freshen up, and if she asked, he could just say, "Oh, I was in there anyway, so I figured I'd brush my teeth." When he returned to the bedroom, they lay in a comfortable silence. After a while, Isabel broke it. "Leo, what time should we go grocery shopping?" "Hmm? I figured if you were cooking, you'd just have the staff from your family's estate bring everything over." Isabel shook her head. "That's what happens when I cook in New York. The staff does all the shopping and prep. But I want to try doing it all myself, from buying the ingredients to the final dish." Leo was puzzled. "It's Christmas Day. Most of the smaller markets are closed. We'd have to go to a big supermarket, and even then, finding everything might be tough since most people stocked up days ago. Why are you so set on making me a meal from scratch?" "No reason. I just want to, because they all say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. And Leo's never had a meal I've made with my own two hands." Hearing her inner thoughts, Leo understood. She must have overheard the staff at the estate talking while she was stuck at home. A gentle smile touched his lips. He reached out and lightly pinched her cheek. "Okay, we'll go to the supermarket later. But since it's your first time, even if it doesn't turn out great, I promise I'll eat every last bite." Isabel playfully slapped his hand away. "Oomph. Have a little faith in me, will you? I've been learning from my family's Michelin star chef for ages." "Whatever you say. Now let me kiss you. MMPH." As Leo kissed her, he could taste the distinct, minty flavor of toothpaste. Apparently, she'd had the exact same idea when she went to the bathroom. Leo and Isabel lingered in bed for nearly an hour before finally getting up. After they'd gotten ready, Isabel sat at her vanity to do her makeup, while Leo went to the living room to feed Buttercream and Oscar. As the pets ate, he pulled out his phone to check the previous day's video performance for Starfall Studios. A week ago, he and Sean Shao had done a deep dive into the holiday season's traffic patterns and user demographics. They'd analyzed trending topics and online behavior from the last 3 Christmases to create a data-driven strategy. Their scriptwriters had worked overtime, churning out several scripts designed to resonate with the holiday audience. Ruby Yu, Quinn Fan, and the other channel leads had filmed multiple videos, creating a content buffer. They planned to release a new video every 2 days throughout the break, analyzing the data from each one to decide which video to post next to maximize engagement. It was a costly approach, but the potential return in traffic was massive. "Phew," Leo murmured to himself. "Everything's looking good. At this rate, we might hit our first 10 million follower account by the end of the holidays." He sent a quick text to Julian Croft, asking him to compile a full report on all the Starfall channel's Christmas Eve data, focusing on user tags with high completion rates. As he was texting, Buttercream, who had been quietly eating his food, suddenly started barking. "Woof, woof. Hey, eat your food. What's all the noise about? Woof, woof." Confused, Leo followed the Samoyed's gaze. Buttercream was barking at something behind him. Leo turned to see Isabel emerging from the bedroom, her makeup finished. The sight of her stunned him. She looked completely different from her usual cool, polished self. Her long, dark hair, normally worn down, was now gathered into a loose, slightly messy side braid that cascaded over one shoulder. A few stray strands framed her fair face, softening her features and replacing her usual aloofness with a gentle, ethereal charm. She wore a cozy, cream-colored knit cardigan over a fitted, light gray hoodie, paired with dark blue straight-leg jeans. A white puffer jacket was draped over her shoulders. The entire outfit stripped away her usual distance, transforming her into the picture-perfect sweet girl next door from TV show. Seeing Leo just staring, Isabel tilted her head, a sweet smile playing on her lips. Her eyes crinkled as she asked, "Leo, why are you looking at me like that?" Her voice was soft and melodic, with a playful, almost flirtatious undertone that was a world away from her usual crisp, cool tone. Ahem. Leo cleared his throat. "I'm just surprised. I've never seen you dressed like this before. It's a little different." He scratched the back of his head, a goofy grin spreading across his face. As he did it, he had a flash of recognition. Wasn't this the exact kind of awkward move Kevin Cheung always pulled? Isabel puffed out her cheeks. "You didn't say you weren't used to it the first time you saw me in black stockings," she huffed. At that, Leo's expression turned dead serious. "That's just human nature." Leo had planned on driving them to the supermarket. The nearest one was almost 2 miles from the Maplewood. But after a full night of snow, the entire city was a pristine white, and the roads were slick with ice. Snowplows and sanitation crews were working everywhere to clear the streets. Worried about him driving on the icy roads, Isabel insisted they walk. "It's pretty far, and it's freezing today. It'll be a long walk. I'm not afraid of being tired if I'm with you," she said, shaking her head. She linked her arm through his, pressing her body close as they started down the sidewalk, their boots crunching on the fresh snow. Once they left the quiet residential area and reached the main street, Isabel transformed into a child. She'd excitedly stomp on the thick piles of snow the plows had pushed to the side of the road, sending up glittering clouds of white. Then she'd hold out her hands to catch the falling flakes, watching them melt in her palm with a quiet gasp of wonder. Watching her, so full of innocent joy, Leo couldn't resist pulling out his phone and secretly taking a video of her back. "Leo, look." He was still recording when she pointed to a snowman in front of a nail salon, her voice filled with excitement. It was a lopsided creation with a crooked carrot nose and 2 black stones for eyes, giving it a charmingly goofy look. Isabel squinted, then trotted over to the snowman, reaching out to straighten its nose. But the snowman was loosely packed, and a large chunk of snow fell away, making it look even more ridiculous. "Oops," she exclaimed, looking back at Leo with a flash of guilt. She pouted and turned back to the snowman. "I'm so sorry," she whispered apologetically. "I didn't mean to." Leo walked over, smiling, and helped her rebuild it. He found a small branch and drew a big, smiling face on the snowman. Isabel watched him, her eyes shining with admiration. The moment he was done, she pulled him over for a selfie with their new friend. After the picture, Leo noticed her cheeks were flushed from the cold, her nose a rosy pink. He unwrapped the scarf from his own neck and carefully draped it around hers. As he did, her eyes lit up with happiness. She deliberately puckered her lips and tilted her chin up, a clear invitation for a kiss. It was then that Leo felt a definitive shift. Since she'd returned from New York last night, something about her had fundamentally changed. Her cool reserve was gone, replaced by a constant, easy affection and a playful, almost clingy sweetness. At first, he thought it was just because they hadn't seen each other in a while, and that she was only like this with him. But now, looking at her face, replaying every moment since last night, he realized it was something more. The old Isabel, even at her most comfortable with him, always had a trace of that innate coolness in her words and actions. It was part of her core, a self-protective shell. The girl in front of him now, full of life and warmth, constantly seeking his affection, was almost a different person. He didn't lean in for the kiss. Instead, his expression grew serious, his voice laced with concern. "Did something happen while you were away? Is there something you're not telling me?" "No, of course not." Leo shook his head, his gaze steady. "Isabel, you're a terrible liar." Her expression faltered. The smile faded. Her eyes dropped, and a quiet gloom settled over her. She said nothing. After a long moment, she lifted her head again, looking directly into his eyes. "Leo, if one day I wasn't the thorn in the heiress anymore, would you still like me?" "Leo, if one day I wasn't the thorn in the heiress anymore, would you still like me?" The question landed like a stone in Leo's chest. He searched her face, tried to read the emotions behind the words, but she was a mask of calm. Her expression was placid, her eyes unreadable. "My feelings for you have never had anything to do with you being a Thornton," he said, his voice firm. He held her gaze, wanting her to feel the absolute sincerity in his words. "Whether you're an heiress or not, to me, you'll always be Isabel Thornton, the girl who brought so much warmth into my life." Isabel stared at him for a long moment, her eyes flickering with an unidentifiable emotion. Finally, she looked away, her gaze settling on the traffic passing on the street. She subconsciously pulled her jacket tighter, a look of melancholy on her face. Leo wasn't blind. He recognized these small, self-protective gestures as signs of deep-seated insecurity. He had his suspicions, but he asked gently, "Did something happen with your family?" She shook her head. "No, it's just I've been hearing things. I'm afraid that if one day I'm not shining so brightly, you won't like me as much anymore." She looked down. "I'm sorry, Leo. I'm just being insecure." In that moment, he saw a glimpse of the little girl. She must have been lonely, without a single person to confide in, slowly building walls around her heart until she was starved for a sense of security. He took her hand, his expression serious. "If anyone should be sorry, it's me. From a practical standpoint, you've always been the thorn and heiress. To everyone else, you're the untouchable campus queen, the rich girl from another world. And I'm just some smart-ass college kid. You never cared about the gap between us. You even stood up to your father for me, betting your entire future on me. The fact that you're feeling this way now means I haven't done enough. I haven't made you feel completely secure. So, I'll work harder. I promise. I'll work as hard as I can, as fast as I can, to make all those ugly whispers disappear." His earnest words were the key that unlocked her floodgates. The anxieties and fears she had bottled up for so long came rushing out. Her eyes welled with tears, and she squeezed his hand tightly, unable to speak as silent tears streamed down her cheeks. Leo pulled her into a hug, gently wiping the tears away. He managed a small smile, though his tone was laced with mock complaint. "So, if I hadn't noticed something was wrong, were you just going to keep all of this to yourself?" "Nothing's wrong," she mumbled, her eyes still red as she stubbornly denied it. Leo didn't press her. He just held her hand and led her toward the supermarket entrance. As they stepped inside, the warm air from the central heating washed over them. Isabel bit her lip, then looked at him again. "Leo, actually, there's something I didn't tell you." "Okay, are you ready to tell me now?" She nodded slowly, her eyes downcast as she gathered her thoughts. "These past few days in New York, something happened with my dad's company," she said in a low voice. "Several key projects ran into trouble, the cash flow has been cut off, and there are lawsuits involved. Most of the company's assets have been frozen, with just enough left to maintain basic operations. Dad's been working himself to the bone, trying to fix it. If he can't, the company could be crippled." Her voice trailed off, and her shoulders began to tremble slightly. Leo stared at her, stunned. It took him several seconds to find his voice. That can't be right. I read the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg almost every day. A company as big as your father's. If something that serious happened, it would have been all over the business news. But I haven't seen anything." Isabel shook her head. It all happened so suddenly that even a lot of people inside the company were caught off guard. The news hasn't leaked to the public yet, but it's been a few days. It'll probably be in the papers by tomorrow at the latest. Leo was floored. He'd suspected something was wrong, but he never imagined it would be this severe. For a publicly traded company, problems with a few projects were one thing. But to have the majority of your assets frozen meant this was far more than a simple business dispute. This was something that could shake the very foundations of Thornton Industries. And then it all clicked into place. No wonder she'd said her father was too busy to notice her. No wonder she'd been able to slip away from New York and come back to Crestview to spend Christmas Eve with him. Her father wasn't just busy. He was fighting for his company's life. And no wonder she'd asked him that heartbreaking question. The whispers she'd been hearing were likely from the household staff, discussing the crisis in hushed tones, feeding her deepest insecurities. While Leo was still reeling from the shock, the gloom on Isabel's face suddenly lifted. She looked up at him and smiled. "You know, I used to fantasize about this. That one day Dad's company would have problems, and he'd lose everything overnight." She said, her smile wistful. "Because then, maybe he'd finally have time for me again." Even though she was smiling, Leo could see the conflict raging in her eyes. A part of her genuinely wanted her father's empire to crumble so she could have him back, like when she was a child. But another part of her knew the devastating toll it would take on a man as proud as Richard Thornton. Sensing her turmoil, Leo didn't press the issue. He offered a few words of comfort and then deliberately changed the subject, trying to distract her. Isabel, too, seemed ready to move on. Her attention was quickly captured by the supermarket's vast snack aisle, her eyes practically sparkling. "Leo, I want bugles." "Get him." "Leo, I want tomato-flavored Pringles." "I'll grab them." "Leo, I want Hershey's Kisses." "Leo, I want hot fries." "Leo, Leo, Leo." Get them all." Isabel skipped ahead, pointing things out, while Leo followed behind, pushing the rapidly filling shopping cart. In less than half an hour, it was overflowing with snacks. Before he could say anything, Isabel had already darted over to the frozen section. She stared at the ice cream freezers, her eyes wide, then turned to Leo with a look of pure, hopeful anticipation. Leo finally let out a weary chuckle. "You know," he said gently, "I think you might have forgotten why we came here in the first place." Huh? Isabel blinked, looking genuinely baffled, as if she'd truly forgotten their original mission. A few seconds later, realization dawned, and a blush crept up her cheeks. "This is all your fault, Leo," she mumbled. "You tricked me into buying all these snacks, and now I've forgotten we were supposed to buy ingredients. You're a bad influence." Pushing a cart piled high with junk food, Leo followed Isabel to the produce section. They were a stark contrast to the serious-looking older couples methodically selecting ingredients for their holiday feasts. Isabel's culinary repertoire was limited to simple, home-style dishes, so she stuck to the basics: cabbage, potatoes, tomatoes. After placing a few vegetables in the cart, she pursed her lips, a dissatisfied look on her face. After a moment, she turned to Leo, her tone crisp. "Leo, after the holidays, we should go to a real farmer's market together." "Why? Can't you find what you want here? This place has everything, even fresh seafood. You can't always get that at a farmer's market." She shook her head, her eyes narrowed playfully. "No, I just want to try haggling with the vendors." Leo stared at her, utterly dumbfounded. Feeling a bit self-conscious under his gaze, she pouted. "Why are you looking at me like that? I'm just a little surprised to hear the words haggling with vendors come out of your mouth." Isabel lifted her chin, sniffing dismissively. "What's so surprising? If one day I really do stop being the Thornton heiress and have to live a normal life, I'll need to be frugal. I'm just practicing." "A starved camel is still bigger than a horse," Leo pointed out. "Even if you weren't an heiress, I doubt you'd be pinching pennies over a few cents." To his surprise, his words made her look at him with wide, worshipful eyes. "Wow, does that mean you're super rich now? So if I ever fall on hard times, you'll take care of me? Then I won't have to be frugal. You wouldn't mind me being your little freeloader, right?" "Of course not." "Okay, then you promised. You have to take care of me." "Humph. Taking care of me is a great deal for him. I'm very low maintenance." Hearing her spoken words and her inner thoughts bleed together, Leo almost couldn't tell which was which anymore. The Isabel he was with now was a world away from the girl who had first moved in next door. Back then, the things she now said so freely were reserved for the quietest corners of her mind. Maybe it won't be long before I can't hear her thoughts at all," Leo mused, a wave of happiness washing over him. The less he heard, the more it meant she was finally comfortable showing the world the person she'd always been on the inside. After the vegetables, Isabel scampered over to the seafood counter. She weaved between the displays, poking at a shrimp on ice and peering into the fish tanks. Suddenly, she turned to him, her face alight with excitement. "Leo, let's buy a fish. It's good luck for the new year." Leo rubbed his nose. "Do you know how to cook fish?" he asked instinctively. Her lips formed a pout. "I haven't learned yet." "So, are we buying it as a pet?" "But you know how to cook it," she said, her eyes twinkling as she looked at him. Leo was speechless for a second, then broke into a laugh. He turned to the employee behind counter. "Hi, could we get one of the please?" As he watched Leo select the fish, Isabel's expression was pure bliss. She moistened her lips. "When I was little, I used to fight with my dad all the time. I wish I could have run away to you back then, just like this." Leo gave a wry smile. "If you'd been running to my place back then, your dad probably would have had Lester investigate me, then maybe had me quietly disappear, just like you wanted to do to that guy who asked for my Discord after my speech at the assembly." Question mark. Isabel's expression froze, then morphed into something much more complicated. "How did you know what I was thinking then?" "I'm pretty sure. I only thought that in my head." "So?" Her eyes widened. "You can hear my thoughts." "You can hear my thoughts?" The words hung in the air. Isabel's expression was one of pure disbelief as her eyes locked onto Leo's, searching his face for an answer. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd brought up the incident with the guy asking for his Discord handle on pure instinct, a complete brain-to-mouth misfire. He hadn't thought it through at all. Facing her intense, penetrating gaze, he felt a wave of guilt. This wasn't the first time she'd been suspicious, and he knew he wouldn't be able to brush it off with a vague excuse this time. He swallowed, forcing himself to calm down, and then feigned a look of shock. "Whoa, you were really thinking that? I was just guessing. I can't believe I was right. See? We're so in sync, we're practically psychic." "Ha ha ha." Isabel remained silent, her eyes still fixed on his face. Seeing that his act wasn't working, Leo's smile grew strained. Huh. He awkwardly scratched the back of his head and cleared his throat. I'm not kidding. How else would I know? I mean, come on. Nobody can actually hear other people's thoughts. That's just sci-fi stuff. He does have a point. If he could really hear my thoughts, then that first night after I moved in, when I was thinking about how I was going to move on his bed, I would die of embarrassment. Thank God he can't hear me. Thank God I could, Leo thought, keeping his expression perfectly neutral. Why? Chloe Chan stared at the retreating backs of Leo and Isabel, her hands clenched so tightly her fingernails dug into her palms. A week ago, she'd been scrolling through TikTok, captivated by videos of college students flocking to Miami for the holidays. They posted stunning photos from trendy spots with captions like, "Sorry, Mom, life is my own adventure." The idea took root. That night, she told her parents she wanted to go to Miami for Christmas. She only needed $2,000, she said, as if it were a pittance. Her mother, Susan, shot down the idea immediately. "Chloe, your father and I always support you when you want to have fun, but Christmas is for family. You have to stay home. Besides," she added gently, "you know your aunt was in the hospital last month. We lent most of our savings to her. We just don't have $2,000 to spare right now." Chloe's face hardened. "Mom, what century are you living in? Who cares about staying home for Christmas? I don't care, I'm going to Miami." "Chloe, be reasonable. You could save that money for something important. When I was your age, I was happy to stay home. I'd barely even been downtown, and you've already seen so much of the world. I don't want to be reasonable. Mom, my life is my own adventure. The money I save at 18 won't solve my problems when I'm 28, but the world I see at 18 will stay with me forever. And I refuse to end up like you, serving everyone, spending my life cooking and cleaning, buried under chores and bills. That's not what I want. I want to travel when I want, eat what I want. I'm going to live for myself." Susan, who usually doted on her daughter, remained patient even after the outburst. "How about this? I can give you $1,500. "No, I need $2,000. That's the bare minimum. But the money is with your aunt. We just don't." Chloe burst into tears. "Then why did you give it to her? I'm your only child. Your money is my money. Why would you give it to someone else? If my aunt is so broke, why is she even in a hospital? Why doesn't she just die? If it weren't for her, I could go to me." Crack. Her father's hand struck her across the face. She stared at him, incredulous. "Dad, you hit me?" His face was red with fury. "Chloe, your mother has spoiled you rotten. That is your aunt, and you wish death on her? Do you hear the words coming out of your mouth? Life is an adventure. Life is what your mother and I have sacrificed to give you everything. You hit me. Fine. I guess I'm less important than an outsider." Chloe refused to reflect on her words. She let out a sob, turned, and ran from the house. Using the last of her money, she took a bus from her hometown of Oak Ridge back to Crestview. She holed up in the off-campus apartment she'd rented during high school, eating takeout for days until her funds dwindled. Now, broke, she'd come to the supermarket to buy instant ramen. And there, she saw them, Leo and Isabel, shopping together. Seeing how happy they were, Chloe felt her heart shatter. "We both fought with our families, so why does Isabel get Leo, while I'm all alone? Why?" Just as she felt herself about to break, Leo and Isabel, having chosen their fish, started walking toward the checkout, right in her path. Blocked, Leo spoke politely. "Excuse me, miss? Could you step aside, please? My girlfriend and I need to get through." "Miss." Chloe was stunned, but she instinctively moved. Leo and Isabel walked past, chatting and laughing, without a second glance. It took Chloe a moment to realize. In her days of self-pity, she hadn't worn any makeup, hadn't even bothered to fix her hair. She was a mess. Leo hadn't ignored her. He hadn't even recognized her. The realization sent a new wave of helpless fury through her. She opened her mouth to scream their names, but a dizzy spell washed over her. Her vision went black, and she staggered backward, slumping to the floor. Finally, she couldn't hold it in any longer. A raw, broken sob escaped her lips. "Wah! As they reached the checkout line, Leo turned to Isabel. "That woman who was blocking the aisle. She looked kind of familiar. Do you know her?" Isabel narrowed her eyes, studying his face. She saw nothing but genuine curiosity and confusion. He truly hadn't recognized Chloe. So, she put on an equally blank expression and shook her head. "Nope, never seen her before." "Oh, well, I guess if I don't know her, it'd be weird if you did." Leo nodded, then turned his attention back to the cashier as their turn came. He started placing their items on the conveyor belt one by one. When he reached for the last bag of chips in the cart, He glanced over at Isabel. Is that everything? You sure there's nothing else you wanted to? He stopped mid-sentence. Isabel wasn't looking at him. Her gaze was fixed on the small rack next to the register, the one filled with various brands of condoms, including the Durex Blue Devils. Her expression was one of intense, curious speculation. Leo's face darkened. Isabel, what are you doing? Exclamation point. She jumped, startled by his tone. She whipped her head around and said with perfect conviction, I was looking at cases for your backup phone. After paying, the cashier informed them that the supermarket was running a Christmas promotion. Any single purchase over $50 earned a chance to enter a prize draw. Their groceries filled the store's largest bags. They each took a handle and rode the escalator down to the first floor where the event was being held. A crowd had already gathered around a transparent prize box. The rules were simple. Show your receipt, draw a plastic egg from the box, and open it to find a slip of paper detailing your prize. The prizes were listed on a large sign nearby. Grand prize, limited edition LV plush toy X12ND prize. MacBook X13 RD prize. $2,000 shopping gift card X one other prizes. $500 gift cards, $200 gift cards, Bluetooth headphones, neck pillows, etc. All the prizes were displayed on a shelf, and a long line of shoppers snaked toward the prize box. Leo quickly noticed a twist. Some of the prize slips had an extra condition. For example, a slip for a $200 gift card might have a line of small text at the bottom. Shout Merry Christmas, everyone, to upgrade your prize to a $500 gift card. Each condition was different, and participants could choose whether or not to complete the challenge. That's a clever promotion, Leo commented. It turns a standard marketing gimmick into something with a bit more personality. Feels less corporate. Isabel tugged on his sleeve. Leo, let's try. The grand prize toy is so cute. Maybe we'll get lucky. Leo looked at the so-called limited edition plush toy. It was cute, sure, but he couldn't see how it was a better prize than a MacBook or $2,000 in gift cards. That's weird, he said. The second prize is worth over $1,000, and the third is $2,000 cash. Why is the grand prize less valuable than the others? Isabel said quietly, because it's a limited edition from Louis Vuitton. The market price is over $20,000, and that's if you can even find one. Leo's eyes widened in disbelief. This stuffed animal costs $20,000. Yep, it's expensive, but it really is beautiful, isn't it? I actually have the other two from the same collection. This limited edition one is the last. I need to have the complete set. She stared at the single grand prize on the shelf, her eyes sparkling. Leo knew she had a thing for stuffed animals. Her bedrooms at the Maplewood, the Thornton estate, and her family's villa in New York were all filled with them. She was a true collector. He figured it was tied to her lonely childhood. The toys were a source of comfort and security. It was a common trait among kids who grew up feeling alone. Looking at the LV toy again, he suddenly felt a sense of mission. All right, he said with determination. Let's give it a shot. If we don't get it this time, we'll go upstairs, buy another $50 worth of stuff, and try again. But Isabel shook her head, a small smile on her face. Let's just try once. If we don't win it, it just means we weren't meant to have it. If we have to try over and over again, it loses the magic of fate, don't you think? Her words, with their twice-repeated emphasis on fate, sent a strange pang through him. He felt like she was alluding to something deeper, but he pushed the thought away, telling himself he was just being overly sensitive lately. Still, as he pulled the receipt from his pocket and walked toward the prize box, that sense of mission grew heavier. Hello, sir. Your receipt qualifies for the prize draw. Please pick an egg from a box, said the young woman running the event, her smile professional. Leo nodded and plunged his hand into the box, swirling it around. Suddenly, his fingers closed around one specific egg. He pulled it out. The attendant took the egg and, in front of everyone, opened it and unfolded the small paper inside. As she read the words, her red-lipped mouth fell open and her eyes widened in shock. This. The people standing behind her craned their necks to see. Their expressions mirrored hers. Leo's mind went blank. No way. Did I really get it on the first try? Congratulations, sir. You've won the second prize for this event, the attendant announced, her voice filled with excitement. A wave of astonished and envious murmurs swept through the crowd as all eyes turned to Leo. That guy's luck is insane. One shot, and he hits the jackpot. Seriously, the second prize is the best one anyway. A free MacBook. Yeah, that LV toy is $20,000, but it's a luxury item. Only a collector would think it's worth it. For a normal person, the MacBook is way better. Man, this is depressing. My wife and I have bought groceries here 3 times just to try and win that MacBook, and the best we got was a $200 gift card. Beside Leo, Isabel finally processed the news, her eyes wide with joyful surprise. Leo, we won second prize. A part of Leo was thrilled. A brand new $1,000 laptop on his first try was something he could brag about to Kevin and Rex for a year. But his excitement was tempered by a pang of disappointment. He had been aiming for the limited edition toy, the one Isabel's heart was set on. Just as he was feeling a little down, the attendant smiled brightly. Sir, your prize also comes with an optional challenge. If you complete it, you can upgrade your prize to the grand prize. Leo was surprised. If I upgrade, what happens to the grand prize egg that's still in the box? Don't worry, sir, the attendant explained patiently. We actually have 2 second prize slots. The slip you're holding is the only one that can be upgraded to the grand prize. If you choose not to upgrade, the LV toy will be rolled over into our next promotional event. What's the condition for upgrading? Leo asked. Sir, you're here with your girlfriend, correct? The two of you will need to complete an interactive game. But be warned, if you fail the game, not only will you not get the grand prize, but you'll also forfeit the second prize. The harsh condition set the crowd buzzing. See, I knew they wouldn't make it that easy to win a $20,000 toy. Still, any sane person would just take the MacBook, right? Why risk it? Definitely. Even if the upgrade were free with no risk, I'm not sure I'd do it. A toy is just a toy, no matter how expensive. The MacBook is actually useful. Are you guys dumb? You could just sell the toy and pocket the cash. You think someone willing to spend 20 grand on a toy is going to buy a secondhand one off some guy who wanted at a supermarket? It would be impossible to sell. Whatever, there's no way this guy is going to risk it. There's no benefit to upgrading, and he could lose everything. Everyone assumed Leo would take the sure thing. Even Isabel leaned in and whispered, Leo, let's not upgrade. We could just take the second prize. I can always buy the toy myself if I really want it. But Leo looked at the attendant without a moment's hesitation. Okay, he said firmly, I want to play the game to upgrade the prize. A collective gasp went through the crowd. They couldn't believe he was crazy enough to risk a MacBook for a stuffed animal. Leo turned to Isabel and smiled. It's okay. I don't need a new laptop. I want to try this. To test this fate of yours. The attendant, stunned by his decisiveness, took a second to recover. All right, sir. If you and your girlfriend would please follow me over here. She led them to a small game area and had them stand a few feet apart. The rules were simple. Isabel would secretly choose one of 4 colored balls, black, white, red, or blue, and tell the attendant her choice. Then, Leo would have 1 minute to guess which color she had picked. If he guessed correctly, they won. Leo frowned. The game seemed to be entirely based on luck. Before he could think further, the attendant had already gotten Isabel's choice and returned to his side. Sir, your girlfriend has chosen her color. The 1 minute timer will start when you're ready. She added, of course, she can't give you any hints. Any attempt to signal the color will result in an automatic failure. Leo nodded. Let's start. Okay. As the countdown began, Leo stared at the 4 colored balls on the table, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The crowd murmured anxiously. Ugh, a 1 in 4 chance. Only 25%. What a shame. He had a brand new laptop in his hands. Why throw it away? I have a feeling this poor kid is going home empty-handed. Leo ignored them, looking up at Isabel. She offered him a faint, encouraging smile, but gave no hint. He knew she wouldn't, even if she could. She was genuinely curious to see if this toy was fated to be hers. And so was he. He took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the 4 colors. Black, he thought. She knows I have a thing for her black stockings. So she'd pick black. But she's smart, so she'd know that I would think that. He narrowed his eyes and reached for the black ball. But in the next instant, a panicked thought echoed in his mind. Leo's going to pick black. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Does this mean this toy and I really aren't fated to be? Leo's going to pick black. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Does this mean this toy and I really aren't fated to be? Isabel's frantic inner voice slammed into Leo's consciousness. His hand froze in midair. He instantly knew the ball wasn't black. Before he could make another move, her thoughts came again, this time tinged with relief. Phew. That was close. He didn't pick black. But that's weird. Why did he stop? The surrounding crowd was just as confused. What's going on? He was about to pick the black one. Why did he stop? So what color did his girlfriend pick? Only the attendant knows. They can't let us know, or someone could shout out a hint. I bet it's red. It's Christmas. Red is festive. If they're both thinking the same thing, they're sure to win. Leo listened to Isabel's inner turmoil, the crowd's speculation, and the well-intentioned advice being thrown his way. He frowned. This was all part of the game, he realized. The organizers wanted the public pressure, the outside noise, to interfere with his choice. Too bad for them, he thought wryly. I'm cheating. He knew he could use his ability to his advantage. All he had to do was feign a choice for each color. If he was wrong, Isabel's panicked thoughts would give it away. He'd already eliminated black, leaving only 3. With a little luck, he'd get on the next try. Worst case, it would take 2 more feints to know for sure. 30 seconds left, the attendant called out. Leo looked at the 4 balls, then at Isabel's serene face. And suddenly, he didn't want to win this way. She wanted to see if they're fated. If I use my ability, it's not fate, it's a rigged game, he thought. The win would be meaningless. The thought solidified in his mind, and he couldn't shake it. 15 seconds. He made his decision. He wouldn't listen. He wanted to see, just like she did, what fate had in store. 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8. Leo took a deep breath, blocking out every thought, every voice. He stared at the 4 colored balls, an image flashing through his mind. He reached out and decisively picked up the white one. 3, 2, 1, time's up. I've chosen, Leo said, holding up the white ball. It's white. The attendant, who had been counting down, froze for a second. When she looked at the white ball in his hand, a genuine look of astonishment finally broke through her professional demeanor. He's right, she gasped, her voice ringing with disbelief. Congratulations, sir. Your girlfriend did indeed choose white. You got it right. Whoa, the crowd erupted. They couldn't believe he'd actually done it. With a 1 in 4 chance and no hints, he had pulled it off. The odds were staggering. No way. That guy's luck is insane. He just guessed it. Ha ha ha, that's amazing. I really thought they were going home with nothing. Ugh, look at them. They're so in sync. You don't even know what I want for dinner. You don't love me. Weren't you the one who said you wanted whatever? What does that have to do with being in sync? Oh, for the love of. When I say whatever, you're not supposed to take it literally. And what's with that tone? Are you getting tired of me? If you're so tired of me, why are you even with me? Wah, you jerk. Amid the chaos, Isabel finally snapped out of her shock. A look of pure, unadulterated joy spread across her face. Forgetting the crowd, forgetting everything, she launched herself into Leo's arms. He held her tight, feeling her body tremble slightly. Her eyes were already glistening with tears. The crowd, seeing this, started to cheer. Kiss her, kiss her. The chant rose around them, and a faint blush crept up Leo's cheeks. He felt a little awkward and knew that Isabel, in a public setting like this, would never be bold enough to kiss him. The hug was already pushing her limits. But he was wrong. The next second, Isabel tilted her face up from his chest. She rose onto her tiptoes, closed her eyes, and pressed her lips against his. Her eyelashes fluttered, casting faint shadows on her cheeks. The unexpected, tender kiss sent Leo's mind into a complete tailspin. His hands instinctively tightened around her, as if to confirm that this moment was real. The cheers of the crowd faded into a distant roar, a background noise to the only thing he could hear, the thunderous, loving cry of her heart. I want to marry you so much. The kiss was brief but intense, filled with all of Isabel's joy and shy affection. When she slowly opened her eyes, her cheeks were the color of ripe tomatoes. A hint of nervousness still lingered in her gaze as she clutched the fabric of his shirt, burying her face in his chest, though she couldn't stop the happy smile from spreading across her lips. The crowd, sensing her shyness, let the cheers die down. They began to disperse, their conversations bubbling up again. Babe, they're so sweet. Let's kiss too. See? It's always more fun to watch other people be in love. Wait, wasn't this a Christmas prize drawing? When did it turn into a public display of affection? Is this the new holiday tradition, luring us single people here just to emotionally destroy us? Amid the dispersing crowd, one pair of eyes remained fixed on Leo and Isabel. They were filled with a complex mix of jealousy, regret, and a barely perceptible trace of resentment. Chloe bit her lip, forcing back the tears. It finally hit her. She had let a truly wonderful guy slip through her fingers. If only she had stood by him back when his aunt and her family were making his life hell. If she had just offered him a little genuine help, a little kindness. Even if he never fell in love with her, he would have spent the rest of his life being good to her. But I was so stupid, she thought. Why did I treat him the same way Brenda did? Now, he wouldn't even waste a second glance on her. Back at the apartment, they placed the prize-winning toy on the sofa and then headed straight for the kitchen. Isabel, wearing an apron, was quickly a whirlwind of activity. Leo, can you wash the tomatoes for me? Leo, can you roll up my sleeves? Leo, where's the salt? Leo had wanted to help cook, but she had adamantly refused, insisting that this meal had to be made by her alone. The most he was allowed to do was be her assistant, washing vegetables and fetching things. So he hovered, occasionally grabbing an ingredient or re-rolling a sleeve that had slipped down as she chopped. While rolling up her sleeve, he finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind since they left the supermarket. Back at the store, when you were choosing the color, you knew I would guess black first, right? I mean, you're smart enough to know I'd immediately think of my thing for your black stockings, and then you'd know I'd think that, making black our secret color. Isabel didn't answer directly. She kept chopping, a small smile on her face. But you didn't choose black, did you? No, Leo said thoughtfully, even though he had ultimately won the game through his own deduction and not by eavesdropping, thus proving their fated connection. He still felt like he'd cheated a little. He had been about to pick black, and if he hadn't heard her panicked inner voice, he might have gone through with it. But then again, maybe his ability to hear her was part of that fate all along, and he hadn't used it to see the final answer, so it still counted. While he was lost in thought, Isabel continued, "Can you tell me why you chose white in the end?" "For the same reason you did," Leo answered with absolute certainty. Isabel finally stopped chopping and looked at him surprised. "You chose white because you knew my reason for choosing it." "Yeah, I was 90% sure I was right." A faint smile touched her lips. She studied him for a moment before saying, "All right, let's hear it. First, I'm certain your favorite color is white. I've noticed that of all the clothes you wear, and in the summer, you sometimes change twice a day, you have more white outfits than any other color. Plus, your phone cases, your shoes, your bedding, your toys. The majority are white. It's clear you prefer it over other colors." He paused, then went on. "Second, you're someone who values tranquility and cleanliness, and you prefer to keep people at a distance, to avoid drama. White embodies all of that. So even if you don't actively think white is my favorite color, your life and your subconscious have given you so many cues that, out of sheer habit, you would gravitate toward it." As Isabel listened to his earnest analysis, her expression shifted from surprise to contemplation, and finally, to deep emotion. She bit her lip, and it was a long moment before she spoke, her voice soft. "Leo, sometimes I really do wonder if you can hear my thoughts." "Haha, maybe I can," he said, not trying to hide it this time, but with a relaxed smile. He didn't feel guilty because this time it was true. He hadn't relied on his ability at all. It was all based on his own careful observation of her. "That's strange, though. We've been talking about something this sensitive for a while now, and I haven't heard a single one of her thoughts." A little while later, as Isabel was finishing up the prep work and about to start cooking, she frowned at him. "Leo, if you're not going to do anything, then get out of the kitchen. You're pacing around and getting in my way." Leo, who had been standing perfectly still by the counter, was completely baffled. I haven't moved an inch." "Yes, you have. You're crowding me. Get out." "But you could fit 3 more of me in here and it still wouldn't be crowded. It feels like you're just using me and then casting me aside. Kind of heartless, don't you think?" That was the last straw. Isabel put down her knife, planted her hands on her hips, and glared at him, her voice dripping with ice. "Leo, you're being ridiculous." "Okay, I get it. I'm leaving." Leo shrugged and turned to exit the kitchen. As he left, he saw her mood instantly brighten. She even started humming to herself. He couldn't help but shake his head and smile. He knew what this was about. She was nervous about him watching her cook for the first time, worried it wouldn't be perfect. He understood. 90% of people felt a little self-conscious about any kind of first time. He was about to go play with buttercream when his phone rang. He looked at the screen, and his expression immediately turned to one of confusion. "Mr. Wallace." Seeing the name on his screen, Leo's first reaction was confusion. While he and Walter Wallace had a good relationship, they weren't the type to call each other without a specific reason. Texts or messages were usually enough. For Mr. Wallace to call him on Christmas Day meant something was up. A knot formed in Leo's stomach. A few months ago, he had arranged for Mr. Wallace's law firm to start serving as the legal department for Starfall Studios. So, a call at this time could only mean one thing: trouble at Starfall. The thought sent a jolt of anxiety through him. He immediately answered the phone. "Hello, Mr. Wallace." On the other end of the line, Walter was taken aback by the grim tone in Leo's voice. "Leo, Merry Christmas," he said, a little hesitant. "Are you feeling all right? You don't sound like yourself." Leo realized he'd let his anxiety get the better of him. He cleared his throat, forcing the worry down and managing a lighter tone. "Merry Christmas to you too, Mr. Wallace." "I'm fine. Just surprised to hear from you." Is everything okay with Starfall?" "Ah." Walter paused, then understood. He chuckled, his voice warm and relaxed. "Leo, don't be so tense. I know we usually text, so a sudden call probably felt a bit formal. I was just visiting an old friend, and on my way out, I realized your apartment was nearby. I figure I'd stop by and see you. It's Christmas, after all. It wouldn't be right for me not to check in. Are you home? Leo let out a long, silent sigh of relief. He glanced toward the kitchen, where Isabel was busy cooking. I am, Mr. Wallace. Please come on up. Excellent. After hanging up, a wave of warmth spread through Leo. For so long, he had felt detached from the world. His parents were gone, and his only living relatives were a pack of vultures. He had long given up on expecting any kind of familial warmth. But now, he realized that wasn't true. He hadn't given up on the feeling. He'd just been let down by the people who were supposed to provide it. Isabel, who had flown back from New York just for him. Kevin, who had been ready to drive through the night to keep him from being alone. And now Mr. Wallace, who was on his way up to visit. They weren't blood, but they were more family than his own relatives had ever been. A few minutes later, while he was still wrapped in these thoughts, his phone rang again. Hello, Leo, I'm at your door. Did you not hear the bell? Oh, 1 second, Mr. Wallace, I'm coming. Leo realized Mr. Wallace must have already been at the entrance to the Maplewood when he called. The thought brought another surge of affection. This was what it felt like to be cared for. He hurried to the door of 1003 and opened it. He saw Mr. Wallace standing with his back to him, facing apartment 1001, his hands full of gift bags. Hearing the door open, Mr. Wallace turned. He saw Leo standing in the doorway of 1003 and froze, his expression confused. He looked up at the number 1001 on the door he'd been facing, then back at Leo. Leo, if I remember correctly, you live in 1001. Why are you? Ahem, you're right, Mr. Wallace. I do live in 1001. Then you're... Walter gestured toward the apartment Leo was standing in. Leo gave an embarrassed smile, scratching the back of his head. This is my girlfriend's place. She's making me lunch today, so I'm over here. Please come in. It's warm inside. Have you told your girlfriend I was coming? I don't want to impose. Of course not. It's no bother at all. Mr. Wallace, this is Isabel Thornton, my girlfriend. We're in the same program at CPI. Isabel, this is Mr. Wallace. He's the lawyer who helped me with my family situation. He's like an uncle to me. Leo made the introductions, though he suspected Isabel already remembered Mr. Wallace. She had been the one who intervened in his lawsuit against Brenda, ensuring no other lawyer in the state would take his aunt's case for an appeal. Isabel, still in her apron, flushed when she saw him. It was the classic panic of meeting a boyfriend's family for the first time, because Leo had just said he saw Mr. Wallace as an uncle, which meant she was meeting her boyfriend's uncle. She lowered her head, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear before looking up shyly. Hello, Mr. Wallace. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, too. Isabel, Walter replied, a brief look of surprise flashing across his face before he smoothed it over. Leo caught the flicker of surprise, but dismissed it. He'd never told Walter he was dating anyone, and besides, Isabel was stunningly beautiful. Anyone would be surprised. Walter shot a mock reproachful look at Leo, then pulled a red Christmas card from his coat pocket and handed it to Isabel. Isabel, because Leo failed to inform me he was with you, I only prepared one of these for him. But since it's our first time meeting, and it's Christmas, I insist you have it. It's a little something from your boyfriend's uncle. I hope I'll have the pleasure of giving you one of these every year for many years to come. His smile was genuine, his eyes sincere. His choice of words was impeccable. Not I didn't know Leo had a girlfriend, but Leo didn't tell me he was with you. Isabel's face grew warm as she looked at the card. This was the first time she had ever been introduced as a girlfriend to one of Leo's family members. She understood the meaning behind his words, and a deep blush crept up her cheeks. Gathering her courage, she nodded softly and accepted the card from his hand. Thank you, Mr. Wallace.